City News Time, 9 o'clock.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 10 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. All breaking news from the province this morning. Premier Doug Ford set to meet with the Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell at 3 o'clock this afternoon. That will officially start the election period. She will likely accept the recommendation to dissolve the provincial parliament, and writs for the provincial election can then be officially signed. The campaign expected to begin for a June 2nd vote. Now, politicians have been unofficially campaigning for weeks now, with 2 of 3 major parties releasing their full platforms. Polls at this point suggest the Progressive Conservatives are poised for re-election, and the third-place Liberals potentially overtaking the NDP to form the official opposition. More on the current polling in Ontario, plus Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca, coming up this morning on the Rob Snow Show. City News Time, 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
For Ottawa, the Valley, Smiths Falls, today a mainly cloudy day, slight chance of showers, the high about 18 degrees. Tonight, periods of rain and 11, and tomorrow, light rain in the morning, but then some clearing should turn into a pretty good Wednesday afternoon, the high 17. For today, the high 18.
And right now, 10 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. City News Time, 9:01. Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting starting just under half an hour from now. That committee will hear from city staff on ways to raise $150 million for the Civic Hospital construction. Now, the Ottawa Hospital wants that contribution. The province does cover 90% of the cost of the building. The hospital, though, has to come up with the rest. Now, staff in the city have been tasked with trying to find ways to raise the cash request without an additional burden on property tax owners and renters that they currently pay. $150 million needed would not have to be in the bank, though, until close to hospital completion. That is projected to be 2028. Ukraine's ambassador-designate to Canada has told the Commons Foreign Affairs Committee Russia is using sexual violence as a weapon of war. Yulia Kovalev says rape and sexual assault must be investigated as war crimes. Kovalev has expressed Ukraine's heartfelt thanks, though, to the country for its continued support, but says the coming weeks are crucial to Ukraine's defense. More military and financial help are needed. A draft opinion obtained by Politico suggests the U.S. Supreme Court could overturn a landmark 1973 court case, Roe v. Wade. That case legalized abortion in America. The decision by the conservative-leaning court to overrule Roe would lead to abortion bans in roughly half the states. Reporter Jackie Quinn says reaction to this leaked document has been pouring in.
Many local politicians in Mississippi, where the restrictive abortion ban being decided by the High Court originated, are praising the opinions in the leaked document. New York's Governor Kathy Hochul tweeted, "Anyone seeking abortions could head to New York, where the procedure will always be safe and accessible."
Now, our province's NDP leader, Andrea Horwath, has reacted, sending a statement out this morning which says, quote, "Another generation fighting the same battles their grandmothers did, a battle that is rooted in the dangerous thinking the bodies of women and non-binary folk can and should be regulated, supervised, and controlled by others." A national funeral will be held at Montreal's Mary, Queen of the World Cathedral this morning for the legendary Canadiens player Guy Lafleur. He died on April 22nd at the age of 70. Now, the funeral is going to be carried on Sportsnet this morning, beginning at 10:30. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Yeah, it's like all the worries of my parents' generation are coming around again. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News. Thanks for spending some time with us this morning. Inflation. You know, my dad used to talk about inflation all the time. And he didn't have much good to say about it either. Mortgage rates in the high teens, 18, 19% mortgage rates, okay, because of inflation. Inflation in Canada is running at what now? 6.7%. And yet the overnight rate from the Bank of Canada is 1% with 6.7% inflation. I looked it up back in 1969. In May of 1969, inflation was running at 9.38%. And the Bank of Canada's overnight interest rate, was 11%. My dad used to work for the phone company back in the 1970s. They got 2 raises a year just to keep up with the cost of living. 2 raises a year. What's the number one issue these days? Cost of living. The Cold War, right? The Cold War. Lots of questions. Are we in a new Cold War? You hear that all the time. Are we in a new Cold War? See, I thought the Cold War was over and the good guys won. Remember, the wall came tumbling down, the wall. And hundreds of millions of people would no longer live under the tyranny of communism, and we wouldn't have to worry about nuclear annihilation. And now, look where we are. Russia invades a country that has been free and democratic and trying to find its own way for barely 30 years. And hardly a day passes without a new threat about the use of nuclear weapons and nuclear annihilation, a threat from the Russian president or someone close to him. And now, holy smokes, you wake up this morning and you read the news and you're like, what? What? Biggest story in the world today. Biggest news story in the world today is what? Roe v. Wade. That's the biggest story in the world. In the world. 49 years old, that ruling. 49 years old, that ruling. Front page news today. And lots of people wondering, could the same thing happen here? In 2022? It's 2022. But everything old is new again. Hey, coming up on our show, nothing so earth-shattering as that, but a hot local issue. That's the plan to fix up the rest of Lansdowne Park. The Northside Stands. The Civic Center. They're 55 years old. Right? Built for the centennial year, 1967. Centennial projects, 1967. And decisions have to be made, and this is all up for discussion this morning by councillors who are members of the FedCo Committee, Finance and Economic Development Committee, meeting today. I mean, outside of the full city council, this is the big one. This is the most powerful committee there is for councillors. And Lansdowne 2.0 on the agenda. New Northside Stands, new Civic Center, 3 residential towers. 2 of them would be apartment buildings, rental units. $330 million to build the whole thing. And from what I've read, the city would have to borrow about $230 million of that to make it happen. And then the thinking is the city would be collecting more property tax. There would be ticket surcharges. And that would be used to make payments on this considerable debt. I mean, $250 million. So, guess who has an opinion on this? Oh, yeah. The poor professor from the Glebe? You bet he does. Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. He's back. He's back on our program. He's back in the country. And longtime listeners, you may remember, he was not a fan of the original redevelopment plan for Lansdowne Park. He was one of the most vocal opponents in this city. Fought against it, organized against it, went to all the public meetings, all the protests, predicted a financial catastrophe for taxpayers because of this so-called waterfall agreement between OSEG and the city of Ottawa. And just in emailing back and forth with him over the week since the news broke about this next phase for Lansdowne, I Well, you'll have to hear it for yourself, but he's, I think, even less than impressed. I thought I heard his head explode. I actually thought I heard his head explode. So, you know how he is. You just kind of wind him up and let him go. There are other things I want to talk about with him, but, that's the big one, and I hope we'll have time to cover other topics, but he can get so wound up on that one. We'll see what happens. So we have word now, as you heard in our newscast, the election is going to be called today, the Ontario election. 3 o'clock this afternoon. The Lieutenant Governor of Ontario will announce the dissolution of the legislature, and they're off to the races. The 30-day mad dash to Election Day in the province of Ontario. Election Day is June the 2nd. June the 2nd. It's going to sneak up on you, and we have plenty of coverage of this today. Coming right up, Stephen Del Duca. He is the leader of the third party, the Liberal Party of Ontario. But the party that governed Ontario most recently from 2003 to 2018, 15 years. For some people, it seemed longer. A long 15 years. From Premier McGuinty to Premier Wynne, then into Premier Ford. The Liberals were tossed out in a real, honest-to-goodness, change election, what I would call a total throw-the-bums-out election. I don't want to see the Liberals anymore. Well, the Liberals are hoping to stage a comeback of historic proportions for Ontario. Some polls have the Liberals in second place. Some polls have the Liberals nipping at Doug Ford's heels. Some polls say it's a tie with the Liberals and the PCs. Some polls have said the Liberals don't have a chance, and it's going to be the Ford PCs in a landslide. But whatever. Stephen Del Duca will make his first official election campaign pitch to voters coming right up on the Rob Snow Show at about 9:15, a little after 9:15 this morning. And Keto Maggie is going to join us. Keto Maggie is the head of Main Street Research, which is one of the leading polling firms in the country, and it's been doing polling for iPolitics, daily polling. So he'll kind of give us the lay of the land right now with the Ontario election officially getting underway later this afternoon. The campaign. Michael Taube is going to join us, syndicated columnist, former speechwriter for Stephen Joseph Harper. Michael's kind of my friend on the right side of things. We're going to talk about all these developments, U.S. politics, talk about the race up here, too, that everybody's paying attention to, and that's the race for the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. We're going to focus today on Patrick Brown. Patrick Brown in the news again on what he is pitching to voters. And we'll do the talkback hour between 10 and 11 o'clock. We do that every day here on the Rob Snow Show. Your phone calls, your opinions at 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. The biggest story in the world is Roe v. Wade. It is. It's an incredible scoop from Politico. I mean, it's the scoop of the year so far. Judgment from the United States Supreme Court leaked to a news reporter. I mean, it's like Pentagon Papers type stuff. It really is. Roe v. Wade is one of the most famous legal cases in American history. Heck, it's one of the most famous legal cases in the history of the world. Full stop. 49 years. Right, 49 years. And now access to abortion in the United States is at risk. And lots of concern, lots of worry in this country. Could that happen here? Could that happen here? So we're going to talk about that. I'd love to hear from women this morning and how you're feeling this morning. Preference to women callers this morning at 750-1310. This is the biggest most important news story in the world. And that's what we do around here. We talk about the news around here. And we get your views on the news, on the Rob Snow Show, on City News.
It's no longer breathing the air. It's a lie that's no longer there. It's a sign hanging by a nail, and I say goodbye to the man on top of the hill. I say hello to an old soul. It's denying what is fake and what is real. It's the heart of letting go. It's the sun that rises from the west shore. I say goodbye to the man on top of the hill. I say hello.
Icon
The Rob Snow Show returns.
on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
June 2nd is Election Day in the province of Ontario, and hoping for a big comeback, a big breakthrough, is the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. Stephen Del Duca joins me this morning here on City News. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. So whether it's later today, whether it's tomorrow, you'll be in the thick of it soon enough. I want to hear your most basic pitch when you're out knocking on a door, when you're in a restaurant, when you're talking to people on the sidewalk of an Ontario community. Here's why you should vote for your local Liberal candidate. What is that in 2022?
Yeah, for sure. So, look, the message that I'm delivering to Ontarians everywhere is that I'm running to be premier because I'm determined to make sure that my daughters grow up in a province that gives them as much opportunity as I had growing up. They're 14 and 11. They attend publicly funded schools. And, you know, I think that they and kids like them across this province need to be set up for success. I think there's a very clear choice in this election campaign between the Ford Conservatives, who will continue to drag this province backwards, continue to put private interests over public systems like healthcare and education, They have ideas to continue to make the rich richer in this province and have no plan whatsoever to deal with the environment and climate change. And on the other hand, we have Ontario Liberals, a new team of women and men, extraordinary candidates who are working so hard to earn people's trust with a positive plan that will be delivered upon competently and in a responsible way to build a strong future.
What would you say is the difference this time, the 2022 Liberals versus the 2018 Liberals? Obviously, the 2018 Liberals had worn out their welcome and were sent a message on election night that it was time for a change. So what's different now, 4 years later, with the Ontario Liberal Party?
Well, look, it's new leadership and it's a new team with some really bold and innovative ideas like the one that I announced just yesterday, a buck a ride province-wide, $1 for transit fares until January 2024 on provincial transit, municipal transit systems to drive up transit ridership, to make it easier and more affordable for families to live in this province and to thrive in this province. So to me, it's about the new leadership, the new ideas, and the new team. If you look at the women and men who are running with me as part of the Ontario Liberal team, so many people with talent, experience from all kinds of walks of life, doctors, nurses, teachers, small business owners, not-for-profit experts, mayors. There's a long list of people that have extraordinary talent. Many of them, this is their first time running, which I'm really thrilled about, and they bring an energy and a drive to this mission that I think is remarkable. So we're going to keep working hard from now till June 2nd to hopefully earn people's trust. And that's just the way to get it done. No shortcut to success.
Yeah, I understand public transit, it's important in the big cities. I understand it, especially Toronto, a big city like Toronto. But $1 a ride. I mean, I know you slam Doug Ford for buck a beer, but buck a ride temporarily, right? It's only in place till 2024. It's kind of gimmicky, isn't it? Isn't it kind of gimmicky?
No, I don't. I don't look at it that way at all, Rob. If you think about and by the way, it's not just the city of Toronto. If you look at transit systems right across this province, including in Ottawa, big transit system, making it more accessible and far more affordable for people to be able to hop on transit in Ottawa and elsewhere,
right,
I think is a really big deal. So, for example, it's $1 a ride or buck a ride province-wide, but we're also going to take the monthly passes that residents in Ottawa would normally purchase, and we're going to drop that down to $40. So you think about someone who's using transit regularly, and by the way, well over 100 municipalities in this province have municipal transit systems. So it's not just Toronto and Ottawa. It's virtually everywhere in this province. This is something that is going to make life very much more affordable. And we're in the middle of affordability.
Affordable for people who use transit. But in Ottawa, the percentage of the population that uses transit is 15%.
And we want those numbers to grow.
Right, it's 15%. No, but what you want is you want the other 85% to subsidize 15% of the population in their public transit usage.
No, I don't look at it that way whatsoever. There's a whole series of priorities that we make collectively as a society to determine how we want to prioritize the way that we're building together. So every single decision a government makes does, to some extent, subsidize something else in society. What Doug Ford and his team are determined to do is to keep taking your tax dollars and my tax dollars and those of middle-income families and drive them towards making the richest in this province even richer. That's not my priority. That's not my value. I actually want to build this province up from the ground up and support those who need that hand up, who need that help, including the millions of Ontarians who take public transit or who want to take public transit, but it's not affordable enough for them right now, and that's what we're going to deliver for them.
All right. Let's talk about housing. So you're in Woodbridge today, you said, right?
That's right.
So does that qualify as part of the GTA? Northern GTA?
It does,
Yeah,
it does. Yeah.
What's a house go for in Woodbridge these days? About 800 and what is it, David? $870 or so $1,000 average selling price in Ottawa now. What's the? Do you know roughly what a house is going for there?
I would say that a single detached home in Woodbridge right now would probably go for somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million to $2 million.
$1.5 million to $2 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how are your daughters going to afford a house?
something my wife and I talk about all the time. How will they afford a house? How will they be able to afford to even rent in this market? Because rent prices have gone through the roof as well. It's a really difficult conversation for young people to be having, for parents and grandparents to think about. This is something that we're going to be talking about a lot more when we release our platform over the next several days. There's a lot of bold ideas that we'll have in there to drive up supply, but also make purchasing a home far more affordable for first-time home buyers in particular, who I believe have been largely ignored by the Ford conservatives.
Okay. Big auto sector announcement yesterday, and there have been a lot of those. Multi-billion-dollar announcements to basically electrify the auto sector, Ontario's most important industry. What do you think of those announcements from the, there's Premier Ford yesterday alongside the Prime Minister. It's kind of smart. He's there with the Liberal Prime Minister. He's not there with you. He's there with the Progressive Conservative Premier of Ontario, making a multi-billion-dollar announcement, the latest in a series of such announcements. Your reaction, Mr. Del Duca?
Well, my reaction would be that I think Justin Trudeau was there yesterday governing. I think Doug Ford has been campaigning for months, and I think that's quite obvious to the people of this province. But look, I'm an electric vehicle owner, have been for 5 years. 5 years ago, my wife and I made our first decision to purchase an electric vehicle. I love it. We love it. We don't plan to go back. So anything that gets Ontario moving in the direction of making it easier and more affordable for consumers to make the switch, I support. That's why we would reinstate the electric vehicle incentive program that Doug Ford got rid of and refuses to bring back. We would want Ontario to be a leader in the assembly and creating the entire supply chain around electric vehicle battery technology. I think Doug Ford talks a really good game about this particular topic, but I don't think he backs it up with meaningful action. As I said just a second ago, stripping out or getting rid of the electric vehicle incentive program 4 years ago, I think was one of the worst decisions that they made because, again, we're in the midst of an affordability crisis. You say on the one hand you want more people to be able to buy or lease these vehicles. On the other hand, you just don't want to make it any easier for middle-income families to make the switch. I think that's hypocritical, and I think people see that.
Okay, it would seem to me that you would have a much greater chance of becoming the next Ontario Premier if you can get a lot of progressive voters, if you can get the most progressive voters to vote for you. To do that, you're going to have to convince Ontarians that the Ontario Liberal Party is a better option than the Ontario New Democrats, something your party couldn't do in the last election. What's the big difference between Liberals and New Democrats these days?
Yeah. Look, I think it's about the ability to put together a responsible and competent plan and then deliver on that. And here's what I mean. My primary fight, or I hate using the term fight to describe this, but my primary sort of responsibility is to make sure people understand that the stark choice is between ourselves, for the Liberals who want to go forward, and as I said, Doug Ford who wants to keep dragging us backwards. But your point is well taken. I think when I saw the NDP release their platform a number of days ago with absolutely no costing in it, with no numbers in it, and here we are now many days later, there's even been a provincial budget since the NDP released their platform. Still, we hear nothing but crickets from the NDP about how they would pay for their commitments.
Right. Where's your platform? Where's your platform?
Well, my platform's coming out over the next several days, but here's the thing. When our platform comes out, the costing will be contained in it. It'll be right there for you to see and your neighbors to see. No surprises, no secrets, full transparency, competent, responsible, balanced. I feel as an Ontarian that it's too much of a risk to accept a lot of promises without any real numbers to back them up. So to me, it was disappointing to see that with all the time that they've had to be ready for this, that they couldn't release a platform that contained costing. I think that's irresponsible and too much of a risk for the people of Ontario. On the other hand, by the way, Ford released a budget, but no plan in that budget. So you have a budget with no plan and a platform with no numbers. I think both options are not good enough for the people of Ontario.
Okay. Good luck. Hope we get to speak again. It's going to be a whirlwind of a month for you. All the best, sir. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
You take care. Thank you.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 10 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. The Premier will visit with the Lieutenant Governor this afternoon at 3 o'clock. It's expected the election will begin once Elizabeth Dowdeswell agrees to the recommendation to dissolve the legislature. It opens up the election campaign officially, even though parties have been campaigning for weeks. Now, Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca says it is a new leader and a new team of Liberals that will vie for your vote. Del Duca tells the Rob Snow Show this morning when asked about the difference between the 2018 party and this one. He says it's a slate of candidates, including many new people, men and women, who have the knowledge and desire to run the province. Fedco just getting underway, considering a request from the Ottawa Hospital to have the city kick in cash to construct the new Civic. While the city is not responsible for any of the cost of the building of a new hospital, the request has been made for $150 million. That would be needed when construction is just about complete around the year 2028. Ukrainians defending that massive steel plant in Mariupol say Russian forces are now storming that facility. Earlier, the deputy mayor told the BBC high-level negotiations were underway involving Ukraine, Russia, and the international organizations on evacuating more people from that plant. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
He's back with us, the poor professor from the Glebe, Associate Professor of Management of the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, Ian Lee. Back in Canada. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
I drove home 1,800 kilometers in 2 days and got home yesterday afternoon.
Okay. Wow, so just got home, like not even 24 hours ago. Okay.
Yesterday afternoon late.
Right. And I suspect as you moved northward, the price of gas just kept getting more and more expensive.
It did. It hit It did hit $4.39 in upstate New York. I was paying $3.75 in Hilton Head and around South Carolina. Yeah.
Okay. So,
which is still cheaper than Canada, by the way. Even at $4.39, it's about 40 cents a liter, 40 cents a liter cheaper than Canada. And New York is a very high tax state, by the way.
Yes. So, I know you've been paying attention to not just the Canadian news, but the local Ottawa news, and you know about the wonderful new plans for Lansdowne Park. And I'm sure you and Clive Doucette, you're going to get the band back together and probably, chain yourself to the north side stands. You probably, won't leave until you're dragged away by an Ottawa police constable. So, no, seriously, what do you think? They're calling it Lansdowne 2.0, a new north side stands and a new Civic Center. They're 55 years old, those two things.
Yeah, I've read the most of the proposal, which is very long, by the way. It's 102 pages, and I've been plowing my way through the material since I got back yesterday afternoon, last night, and again this morning because I got up at 5. Here's my take. By the way, for those who say it's about NIMBY, let's get rid of that, okay? Somebody can be an analyst without being, just because they live somewhere, it doesn't invalidate what they're saying.
Oh, yeah, but you're kind of NIMBY, too.
For those who are saying it's about my self-interest, I turn 70 next year. I am not going to be around in 15, 25, 35, 50 years. Let's put that on the table because I am evidence-based. I've looked at average life expectancy of men and women, and no, I'm not going to be around 30 or 40 years. So no, it's not about me. It's about what I'm now about to say.
All right.
Lansdowne 2 is to bail out OSEG from the failed business model of Lansdowne 1 that I predicted 12 years ago due to the lack of year-round customers to sustain the retail model of over 100 stores. I argued, and I'm just building up to a point, so bear with me. I argued at the time, contra Roger Greenberg, that the stores, there's no such thing as uniqueness in retail. A restaurant's a restaurant. Okay, one sells burgers and the next sells, fusion food or whatever. They sell food and they sell alcohol. That's not unique. And I go to restaurants around the world. I went to a whole bunch in South Carolina. And I thought, my God, they look just like the restaurants here. Okay? So the point was the population of the glebe was too small to support over 100 stores. And I argued people would not drive in from Canada and Orleans, et cetera, due to the distance, the time, and the congestion in the center. Thus, I predicted, this is on the record, people can go look it up. I'm not making this up.
I know.
I said it before council. I said repeatedly that once OSEG and investors slowly learn what I said, that the retail model is not sustainable, they will then pivot, I predicted 12 years ago, to real estate development and change the model to condos because the location is a prime area. Prime anything in the downtown, but when I say the downtown, in the urban core.
I should get you to pick my lottery numbers.
And Lansdowne 2 is the empirical proof of what I was saying in my strategic analysis 12 years ago, 10 years ago, recently. Or as P.T. Barnum said, there's a sucker born every minute, and you never give a sucker an even break. We're using more public funds, $300 million, that's a third of $1 billion, at a time when the sugar daddy of the city of Ottawa is downsizing like crazy. By the way, for those who don't get my language, that's the government of Canada. And they're going to be downsizing big time, and we're going to be looking at huge shortfalls of payment in lieu of taxes. So we're using.
You mean because of the work from home? I just so people can keep up with your line of thought.
Yeah,
here,
and they're dumping leases and they're selling buildings left, right, and center. And the idea that 100,000 public servants are going to continue going into the downtown is just nonsense.
Okay.
It's hallucination.
Right.
Okay,
right.
So we're using public funds to bail out this private investment firm called OSEG. The justification in 2010 was to eliminate the famous concrete jungle at Lansdowne, the concrete and asphalt parking lots.
Yes.
So what OSEG and the city are now doing is they're going to make the concrete jungle go horizontal to vertical with very tall buildings, possibly plus 20 stories. Yes, I support a lot more housing, Rob.
Yes, you do.
Correct.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes,
where
you do.
people want to live and can afford to live.
Who doesn't want to live in the glebe? Who doesn't want to live? You live in the glebe. It must be a great place.
Hang on. Hear me out. Right. The idea that this is, and they've dropped the phrase throughout the report about affordable housing, is simply laughable. Okay? It is snake oil. In every city I've studied in Canada, U.S., UK, Shanghai, where I've taught, Hong Kong, the most expensive properties everywhere are closest to the downtown core. Everyone knows this, and yet they spin this out that it's affordable housing. No, it's not going to be affordable housing.
Some of it will be. Some of it will be. They're going to set aside a certain percentage of it to be.
Okay, well that's you
the government's the government's definition of affordable housing, which goes by I think the square foot or something.
Right.
Like that.
Two more points, and then I'll stop. Okay.
Okay.
The air rights phrase they're using, everybody, is deceptive and dishonest.
What does that mean?
These are high-rise buildings built in the ground. As with any tall building, they do not float suspended in the air. They're using this vocabulary to disguise the continued privatization of a public park with private condos. Only the city will own the land, and so you'll have a long-term lease. They do this in Hong Kong, by the way, 99-year leases, but it's privatization.
What park are you talking about? There's no park there. There's no park there.
Now, my final comment.
Right.
I've been to a whole bunch of parks around the world. Would the most capitalist nation in the world, that's the United States of America, would they allow condos or rental buildings to be built inside Central Park?
No.
No.
But you're not comparing Lansdowne. You're not comparing Lansdowne Park to Central Park.
Of course I am. It's an urban park in the center of the capital of Canada.
You're crazy.
There's small parks in downtown Washington, D.C.
Lansdowne Park's a park the same way Fenway Park in Boston is a park.
No.
Come on. You lost that one 12 years ago. You knew, Come
Rob, I've lived in Ottawa all my life. I know what a park looks like.
Right.
I know what parks are.
Yeah. A park looks like Gatineau Park. Okay? A park looks like Algonquin Park. Come on.
No, not at all. That's a false analogy.
Oh, you're saying you're trying to compare Lansdowne to Central Park. Give me a break. I've been to Central Park.
Go in the city where you don't have tall buildings. I've been to Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. I've been to Hyde Park many times in London.
Right.
I've been to the Tuileries and the Jardin du Luxembourg in Paris. And let me tell you, no, they don't. And they look differently. I mean, obviously the Tuileries looks different from the Jardin du Luxembourg, which looks differently from Stanley Park. But there's one thing in common. They don't have tall buildings in the bloody park.
Sure.
That's just a fact.
Yeah.
And we got to deal with facts
and not
Right.
ideological.
But again,
spin.
you keep saying, it's a park.
Well, did you know in this plan I just read,
Yeah.
they use the word park a whole bunch of times. They talk about the urban park that
Yeah.
you deny exists.
Okay, all right.
Seriously. Do I think it'll go forward? I think they're going to ram it through.
Yeah.
And I think long after I'm gone,
Right.
I think that people 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years will look back and they will say that the civic leaders, the business leaders, and the community leaders, the councillors and the mayor failed the city of Ottawa in using, this is the second largest country in the world, Rob.
Yeah.
We've got land coming out our wazoo.
Right.
It's not that we're short of land in this country.
No.
You can build high-rise condos anywhere you want, and there's no need to put them in a park. And so I'm just saying, I'm not.
He
I'm
keeps
not
saying it's a
anti-developer.
park.
Some
They're going to
people
put
accuse-
them right like next to the Northside Stands. They're like, where's the park next to the Northside Stands?
Listen, I'm not against developers. I think developers are very, very important.
Right.
I'm a capitalist on steroids, red meat. I'm just saying you don't need to put high-rise condos on Parliament Hill or in Major Hills Park or in Lansdowne Park
Right.
or in Dow's Lake.
Okay.
You just don't need to. There's no need. None.
No, I understand that. It's strange to hear you say that because you've spent the last 2 years on the Rob Snow Show saying we need more housing, supply. So here's 3 towers, 2 of them are rentals.
And I have
How many times have you
testified
said you can't
before
suck and
the
blow at
House-
the same time?
Rob,
right?
Rob, get the facts out there.
Okay.
I have testified before the city of Ottawa.
I
saying,
know.
Expand the suburban boundary.
Yes.
In other words, in every city I've looked at, where does the city grow? At the
Right.
edges.
Right.
I've been
right.
to London,
right.
and
Because the
Tower of
glebe is
London
full.
was
The glebe
original
is full.
downtown.
The glebe is full. The glebe is full. Okay, what you're really saying is the retail has failed,
Mostly.
right? So
Yes.
they're pivoting to a condo strategy.
That's what I'm
Right,
saying.
that's what you're saying.
That's right.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
you see, I've gone over there in the wintertime, and I'm telling you, the restaurants, first off, most of them, many of them have failed, or quite a few have turned over. You'll go to them, and there's nobody there. There's nobody there. In the
Right.
summer, yes, the place is full. Okay, it's become a summer place. Okay.
Okay.
But there isn't.
But what if
enough-
there are 1,200 more housing units there?
Well, I think that will obviously produce more demand.
Right.
If you got 2 people per housing unit,
Yeah.
you've just doubled the times 1,200. You've roughly doubled the population of the glebe. Whether or not 5,000 or 6,000 people in the glebe is enough to support over 100 businesses in Lansdowne Park, not to mention the small businesses down Bank Street, yet to be determined. I'm skeptical. Those people will shop locally, of course, because you're not going to drive any more than Canada will drive into Lansdowne. People that live at Lansdowne aren't going to drive to Canada either to go to supper. So you're going to have more customers there for sure. But I don't. I think their strategy is that they realize they can make a lot more money off of selling condos or creating rental buildings than they can from the rents they're getting from the retail businesses.
Okay. You may not be NIMBY, but you may be bananas. You know that term banana? You're a
No,
banana?
what is it?
Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone? You're bananas.
No,
You're
I
bananas.
want to build. I want to build. I want to build. I want to build on the burbs. I bought my first house, Rob.
Yeah.
It was a garden home.
I know.
A little tiny, cheap,
I
1,100
know.
square foot garden
I
home,
know.
and I was on the very edge of Ottawa at Paulinka Drive at Hunt Club. You couldn't. That was the edge of Ottawa.
That was the edge of Ottawa at the time, sure.
It was.
Yeah.
And so guess what? You keep adding to the edges. Every
Yeah.
city has done this.
Right.
Every city. You go to Paris and look at the historic downtown and then go up where the burbs are. They're 20 kilometers away. So this is a denial of growth on the edges where the affordable housing is built and has always been built in every city I've looked at. And I don't know why they deny this and start to tell us, oh no, affordable housing is where you put in the downtown. That's nonsense. That's where the most expensive real estate is anywhere in any city. And so if you want affordable housing, you put it out in the burbs. But the councillors and the mayor, have this ideological opposition to growth on the edges of the city. At the same time, we're increasing the number of immigrants to 400,000 a year.
Yes.
And what we're now doing is what the French did for a long time, said, well, you can't own a house like the people that live in Canada. We're going to stick you in these tall high-rise buildings called les banlieues. and that's where they created these immigrant ghettos in France because they refused to integrate the immigrants into the population of their country. It seems to me that we're going towards that way, not because of Lansdowne, but this idea of densification. We've got to build tall buildings in the urban core as opposed to houses out on the edges of the city, and we're moving down I call it the banlieue strategy, and it's unconscious racism.
Okay, well,
unconscious.
Okay. All right, okay. When we come back, we're going to talk about, the Ontario election is going to be called today at 3 o'clock this afternoon. That just broke this morning. So the last big announcement was Premier Doug Ford next to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau putting $1 billion into an automaker, Stellantis, which used to be called Chrysler, in order to keep jobs in Windsor and Brampton. This is a company that made a profit of 13 billion euros last year. So why are we putting money into a company that made $13 billion in profit, billion euros in profit? We'll ask the professor about that. Pay to play. When we come back, Rob Snow Show, City News.
The Centre of Excellence in Frailty-Informed Care at Pearly Health conducts applied research that focuses on the development of best practices. And really, the goal of the Centre of Excellence is to optimize care and quality of life for older adults living with frailty.
Well, yeah, and that comes to the latest research when it comes to adults living with frailty, older adults, as you said. What is some of the latest research that you've seen?
Yeah, so we're really proud of a recent study that's coming out of the Centre of Excellence focusing on our CME Understanding Frailty Together program. So CME is an approach to caring for older adults living with frailty, and it really focuses on the assessment and management of frailty in long-term care. So what's really unique about the program is that it was developed in long-term care and it's designed for long-term care. It really focuses on early and transparent communication with families and with residents so that they really have a good understanding of the health status of their loved one and then can make decisions about their care and their future goals of care in that context of frailty, understanding what those risks are of a particular intervention or course of treatment.
Danielle, when we say frailty, what exactly do we mean by that?
Yeah, so frailty is a medical condition. It leads to a decline in function and health. And people that are more severely frail are more susceptible to large declines in their health. So if they do suffer from a minor illness, they're less able to cope with that illness, and they're more subject to rapid declines in their overall health.
When it comes to sort of interventions, I guess there's some are more invasive, some are less invasive. I know you're obviously, looking at the less invasive, but what exactly do we mean by that? Like, can you give us an idea of some of those invasive interventions that we've seen in the past?
Yeah, so the CME program revolves around, again, assessing the risks of particular interventions. So someone who is frail, let's say, and has a fall, one of the courses of treatment could be going to the hospital. But someone who's very frail needs to understand, and their families need to understand, what the implications of going to the hospital could be for someone who has that level of frailty. So the CME program helps them understand those risks and take into account really their values and their preferences and their goals of care to help them make the best decision for them.
Changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News 101.1.
Business, Carleton University, his weekly appearance. The most important manufacturing industry in Ontario is the auto sector. You would agree? Auto manufacturing, auto parts.
If you're asking me, is it the most important sector in Ontario? I absolutely disagree, and I've got the stats.
Yeah, manufacturing sector.
Okay, but manufacturing is only 12% of GDP in all of Canada.
Right.
It's collapsed.
Right, but you would agree that it's still the most important to Ontario's economy. right?
It's actually important to 2 or 3 cities in southern Ontario. It's not important to Ottawa. It's not important to northern Ontario. It's important to Windsor. It's important to Brampton. It's very localized.
Yeah, Oakville
Very
as
localized.
well. Yeah. Okay. All right. Jeepers creepers.
throw in a
You're a
couple
real
more
stickler
facts?
for details. The federal government yesterday announced it'll put $529 million into Stellantis, okay, to shift them over to make electric cars. Government of Ontario, pretty much matching it, $513 million. So more than $1 billion.
Yeah.
Okay, for the 2 plants, Windsor, Brampton. Okay, this used to be Chrysler.
Yeah.
Stellantis made a profit of 13 billion euros last year. Now, all governments of all stripes, here you have a progressive conservative provincial government, a liberal federal government, they do this. Harper's government did this. It's known as pay to play because the thinking goes, well, if Ontario doesn't do it, Michigan will do it. Or if Ontario doesn't do it, maybe one of the southern U.S. automaking states will do it, right? Pay to play. You have to pay to play.
Right.
What do you think about that?
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, right?
And let me explain why.
Go ahead.
Beyond the 13 billion, which is over 20 billion Canadian dollars, by the way. I didn't look up the exchange rate, but I'm guessing it's about 20 billion. But that's not even the art. Listen to this. Stellantis employs in all Canada. This is from Stellantis website. I'm not making this up, people. They employ 9,700 people in Canada. That's about the size of Carleton Place. I grew up on a farm outside of Carleton Place. And by the way, good people in Carleton Place, so don't think I'm picking on them. If we're going to drop, I'm using them as a metaphor for Stellantis.
Yeah.
So if we're going to drop $1 billion into Carleton Place, why not Empire? Why shouldn't they get $1 billion? And what about Carp? And what about Pembroke? And what about Brockville? And what about Prescott? And what about Renfrew? You see what I'm saying? I mean, 9,700 employees. And by the way, people can say, well, that's a lot of Canadians. According to StatsCan, there's over almost 20 million working Canadians. So what I'm trying to say is the manufacturing sector has declined over 40-odd years, 50 years, precipitously. So I went and looked up the OECD data. And it has it for Canada, U.S., Germany, and so forth. Manufacturing has declined from around 35% of GDP in 1970, when it was very important part of the economy for sure. It's down to about 12% of GDP.
Okay.
And it's very localized. And the idea that Canada would disappear if we stopped and the auto industry stopped making cars here is nonsense.
Really?
Australia confronted this demand for payback from the auto companies back about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they said, we're just not paying your bribes anymore. They didn't say bribes, that's me.
Incentives. Let's call it incentives. Let's use the word incentives.
Anymore.
Yeah.
And so there are no cars now made in Australia. They import all their cars. And is anyone suggesting that Australia has collapsed and gone off the planet Earth, collapsed into poverty and penury and third world status? Not at all.
Right.
Australia is a very affluent country because they've become overwhelmingly a services economy, and I don't mean flipping hamburgers. I'm in the service sector in education. You're in the service sector in broadcasting.
So,
people that work in government in the service sector, law firms, accounting firms, pension, in other words, 80% of the jobs in Canada are in the services sector.
Like white-collar jobs.
Well, not just white-collar jobs. Anybody who's in sales, anybody in, retail is part of the services sector. If you're working in a small retail shop.
Okay.
People think services...
So you know this. Surely the government knows this. So why are they giving them $1 billion then, do you think?
The votes, it's the marginal vote theory, that the voters in those 3 plants in those cities, which is Brampton, Windsor, and Etobicoke, that's where the Stellantis plants are, that they need those votes, and they want to win those ridings. And so the unions and the car companies have been very, very effective at convincing politicians that they really have to do this. And, here we are going into an aging, we all know we're going into an aging economy.
But it's electric cars, so isn't that worth the money? It's electric cars.
They're going to make electric cars around the world, whether we make them or not. The idea that the world
but shouldn't we try to make them
on Canada is nonsense.
But if we can make them here, why shouldn't we try to make them?
Well, have no problem. Go make them. Just don't take $1 billion of my taxpayer money.
Okay.
I'm not saying don't make cars. I'm just saying don't demand a subsidy. I don't believe in subsidies for big, wealthy corporations. I'm a capitalist.
Right.
I want them to do it on their own because I have confidence that they can do it profitably without government money.
Okay. Hey, speaking of capitalism, did you see the opinion piece from Frank Stronach? And speaking of auto parts, he's the auto parts magnate, right? Magna. Capitalism is not working for many people, he writes today. Capitalism is one of the great engines of wealth creation in human history, but it has a fatal flaw. Over time, more and more capital becomes concentrated in the hands of fewer and fewer people. The rich are getting richer. The gap between the wealthy and the workers is growing wider. It's not surprising more and more people are turning to socialist ideas. Our number one priority should be to find ways in which workers can get some of the wealth they create, not from government taxation, but from the businesses they work for. One of the best ways for this to happen would be to give workers the opportunity to share in a portion of the profits they help make. What do you think? That's from one of the wealthiest men in Canada, right?
Yeah, this is what happens when you get a wealthy guy or a politician who starts to bloviate without evidence. First off, the workers do share, okay? We are the fifth highest average income per person in the world on planet Earth.
Right.
That's where we share. Second, he is confusing wealth with income. When you go to the grocery store, you're paying with your wages, not the fact that Jeff Bezos has $200 billion. You can't go to the grocery store and say, I don't have to pay for the groceries because Jeff Bezos has $200 billion. He's confusing wealth with income. Wealth is a stock, and that's the residual because they create successful companies that hire lots of people at really good wages, and then the owners of those shares...
Right, but he says the rich are getting richer, and the gap between the wealthy and the workers is growing wider.
It isn't, actually. We have the Gini inequality. If you want to get technical, the inequality index that shows the inequality from the top and the bottom. Canada is right at the OECD in the middle. Second point, the OECD countries have vastly lower inequality than developing countries like Russia or China or other countries around the world. We have the lowest inequality in the highest income capitalist countries. So it is bogus nonsense, empirical nonsense to say that inequality is skyrocketing. No, it's not.
All right. So just to recap today's appearance from Ian Lee, no, you can't live in the glebe. Okay, that's what you can't live in the glebe.
If you're rich.
Stop giving my money to auto workers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And he prefers the capitalist overlords to the working class.
No, I didn't.
Did I read?
No. Listen, you want the other model? Right. Go to Cuba or Venezuela or North Korea.
Yeah, okay. So all right, comrade. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
Yep. Ian Lee, Carleton University Sprott School of Business. We'll be back. Talkback Hour, 750-1310 after the news.
Being a crossing guard works great as part of my schedule as a high school student because I still have time to do my tests and assignments while earning a little bit of cash on the side.
Working as a crossing guard fits into my current lifestyle because it gives me a lot of time during the day to pursue hobbies that I'm very interested in.
A friend of mine introduced me to this job. I didn't know it was actually a paid job.
I always start my day. It's a very little, I guess, few months baby, and she always comes with her dad on a pram, and the smile she has, like, oh my God.
Well, I think the OSC is a very good employer. They show quite clearly that they care about you. They're very polite.
They really make you feel like you're part of a family.
It's fun. I really enjoy it.
Gets us out of the house, too.
Yeah.
1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 10 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The chair of the Ottawa Hospital fundraising campaign for a new Civic was in front of the Fedco this morning, asking the city to contribute to the construction. Roger Greenberg says they're about halfway through the campaign and people are very supportive in Ottawa. He pointed out instances in the past where the city has contributed to hospital construction. The Riverside campus, for example, was built on city-donated land. Greenberg says he is confident a city contribution from all residents and businesses would be welcome.
I know that working together, the Ottawa Hospital and the city can come up with a proposal that will allow for a contribution of $150 million on behalf of all citizens and businesses of Ottawa.
Now, the Ottawa Hospital CEO says there hasn't been a new build in healthcare in Ottawa for decades. Cameron Love says a new hospital would feature great minds tackling the medical issues of the day. That would rival any centre in Canada, and he says likely around the world. City News Time, 10:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
For Ottawa, the Valley, Smiths Falls, today a mainly cloudy day, slight chance of showers, a high about 18 degrees. Tonight, periods of rain and 11, and tomorrow, light rain in the morning, but then some clearing should turn into a pretty good Wednesday afternoon, the high 17. For today, the high 18.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 10 degrees. There is outrage in Italy today over the recent remarks by the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov.
Many here in Italy continue to express anger after Lavrov said on Italian TV that just because Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky is Jewish doesn't mean he's not a Nazi.
Sono proprio gli ebrei.
Lavrov also said Adolf Hitler himself had Jewish roots. Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi called the comments false, abhorrent, and obscene. A parliamentary inquiry has been launched over the incident. Italian TV has come under criticism for inviting experts and journalists critical of Western support for Ukraine. 2 Russian journalists on the EU sanctions list have been among those invited on Italian TV shows. Megan Williams, ABC News, Rome.
City News Time, 10:03. A man in his 60s sustained significant burns to his arms and legs in a trailer fire. The fire service was called and then called paramedics when the trailer on Dunning Road in the East End caught fire just before 8 o'clock this morning. The man was transferred to hospital. He was listed in stable condition. An emotional day in Montreal and in many places across the country. Political and business leaders, sports figures from across the country are all gathering to say goodbye to a legend. Montreal Canadiens' Guy Lafleur will be remembered with a national funeral. Coverage on Sportsnet will start in about a half an hour at 10:30. Our Kevin Meisner sets the scene.
Large TV screens are set up outside Montreal's historic Mary Queen of the World Cathedral for what's expected to be a large overflow gathering on the street. A Royal Canadian Air Force flypast by a CF-18 Hornet will happen as the funeral procession leaves the church. Guy Lafleur was a helicopter pilot and honorary Air Force colonel. As we hear from Sportsnet's Eric Engels in Montreal, thousands of people have paid tribute to Lafleur over the past couple of days during a visitation at the Bell Centre.
Dignitaries, politicians, former teammates, current Canadians, even the Toronto Maple Leafs had a contingent of people that came in here. This is such an important person in the hockey world that we've lost here.
Lafleur was an NHL Hall of Famer and 5-time Stanley Cup champion. The 70-year-old Lafleur died after a battle with lung cancer. Kevin Meisner, City News.
And I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Could it happen here? That's a question a lot of people are asking in this country today. Could it happen here? According to a news report, the United States Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade, the ruling that declared restrictive state regulation of abortion unconstitutional in the United States. So a lot of people are wondering, could the same thing happen here? Limits on access to abortion services. That is the biggest news story in the world, and we talk about the news during the Talkback Hour here on City News. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. It's a Politico scoop, okay? And it's a big scoop that the United States is Supreme Court is about to overturn Roe v. Wade. Huge story. Top story on just about every major news site, end to end on the cable news networks right now. A massive scoop for Politico. My goodness, that news team. I can't ever recall a news story like this involving a leak about a ruling from the United States Supreme Court. I mean, ever. It's like up there with the Pentagon Papers. So this is the Talkback Hour, and that's the question. Could it happen here? Because that question is it's all over social media right now. Could it happen here? There are statements of fact. It could happen here. It could happen here. I don't think so, but a lot of people think so. There's no really wrong answer. It's what healthy dialogue is all about. We like to talk about the news on this show. No bigger news story than this one. But I'll tell you what. I hate talking about abortion on the radio. I really do. I rarely do. I have not done a show about abortion in 3 years. And before that, I had not done a show on this topic in 7 years. So, like twice in 10 years. And that's deliberate on my part. It was advice I received as a young journalist. I was told to avoid the topic. The two sides are so entrenched, it's futile to even have a debate. And you're a man. And you're never going to have to confront these issues. But could it happen here? Could it happen here? And abortion restrictions could return to Canada. I don't think so for a whole bunch of reasons. And, I could outline them for you, I guess, but it's not so much about what I think, rather about what you think. I certainly prefer hearing from women this morning at 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. You see what's happening in the United States, where the U.S. Supreme Court is now a conservative-leaning Supreme Court. And will be for a long time. What do you think about that happening here in Canada on this particular issue? So a preference to women voices this morning. The line that came to me when I was coming, elections have consequences. You remember that? Elections have consequences? Elections have consequences. Doesn't that like scream at people this morning? With this 49-year-old ruling from the United States Supreme Court that, they've been fighting over this for 49 years, right? Trump won and had kind of events on his side because of his ability to appoint people to the Supreme Court of the United States. He had three, right? Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, everybody remembers that one, and Amy Coney Barrett was the most recent one. And when they were appointed, they were all either 55 years of age or younger, and it's a lifetime appointment. So they're going to be there a long time. And when we were following these appointments and the hearings, and we had academics on the show, and they told us there are going to be people who are going to overlook a lot of the bad side of Donald Trump, all the the shortcomings and the nasty stuff of Donald Trump, and they're going to vote for Donald Trump, not because they like Donald Trump, but because they want a conservative Supreme Court. And that's the only reason they're going to vote for Trump. Elections have consequences. Well, here's a lasting one. A right-leaning U.S. Supreme Court, potentially for years and years and years to come, maybe decades to come, okay? And you think this news is all over the cable news networks this morning? And the Democrats have this majority. They have the presidency, they have the House, they have the Senate, at least until the midterms, And there's nothing they can do to stop this. Now, maybe it serves as some kind of rallying issue for the Democrats. The president is not a popular president. The Democrats are expected to lose seats in the midterms. Not unusual, but it's shaping up to be bad for the Democrats in the midterms. Biden's not popular. Maybe this motivates progressive voters. Look at what the U.S. Supreme Court is going to do with a woman's right to choose. It could happen here. That's what's all over Twitter this morning, is it could happen here. It could happen here. That's all over Canadian political Twitter this morning. Could it happen here? Could it happen here? That's the question. Some people are warning, absolutely, stay vigilant. Stay vigilant, okay? 750-1310. Mark in Ottawa South. I prefer to hear from women, but Mark, you're on the line. Mark, Ottawa South.
Well,
go ahead.
thank you,
Yeah,
Rob.
go ahead. Yeah.
It's not impossible, but it's unlikely.
Okay.
Curiously enough, a major Canadian anniversary went by last month almost unnoticed. April 17th, the 40th anniversary of the patriation of the Constitution and the Charter of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall any.
Oh, there were some think pieces in the media about the 40th anniversary of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Yeah.
Well, it's a very important event.
Sure.
Now, first off, in Canada, we are dominated by a liberal elite. They use the term Laurentian elite,
right?
But it's not geographically confined to that region. And the Prime Minister has the capacity to handpick Supreme Court justices.
Yes.
So he can, without any kind of parliamentary oversight or approval.
Right.
So he can put people on the Supreme Court that share his liberal philosophy.
I suppose, yeah.
And so the idea of a conservative majority on the Supreme Court of Canada that would ban abortion is very, very unlikely.
Right.
Abortion is the issue that never goes away. It's unlike any other issue. First of all, the criticism against it is that it's murder. It's not like other issues like whether we should have fixed or flexible exchange rates, because in the case of something like that, the concern is that it will do economic damage.
Right.
If you believe something is murder, then it's hard not to be adamantly opposed to it.
Sure. Yeah.
But it deals with the greatest dilemma of the human animal. That is, we believe that individual human life is sacred. The problem is that which is sacred can be conceived by the very worst human behavior, rape and incest, as well as by conjugal love between a man and a woman who want a child and are fit to raise it. The capacity to conceive a child is in no way dependent upon the fitness to bear a child.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you see, none of us get to choose the circumstances of our conception. And if we take the idea that a child is equal no matter how they get conceived, it's not their fault, then the idea that a person should have some kind of protection in their fetal stage, I would say, though, that even if we eliminated all men from the debate, there would still be a great debate. This is not confined to men.
Okay. Or to women, you mean? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. I'm going to run. Okay. Pretty quiet there. I'm surprised. It's only the biggest news story in the world. 10:15, Rob Snow Show, City News.
Big crowd here tonight at the Ottawa Civic Centre, the OHL Championship Game 6. Two of the best face-off men in the OHL meeting right here at the Civic Centre. Zenon Konopka against Stephen Weiss. And we're underway as John Zoyan grabs it, gets across the blue line. Quick shot right on. Zep, no problem. High off the glass, back to center for Ottawa. Sellers, pass up to Bauman. Gets bumped off the puck by Wisniewski. Puck out.
Talking earlier today
that sometimes in big games it's a lucky bounce that can decide things. Was he ever right on this play so far? Watch Sozanov going the opposite way, just take a whack at it. Look at Talbot strip the puck from Oosterdahl. There it is in front of the net, and Sozanov gets a piece of it, and it goes in behind Rob Zepp. Bowman carries the puck up the ice, then Talbot strips it, and there's Sozanov, who outwins the assignment with the back-checking Damien Surma, and Ottawa's got the lead.
John Zion for Ottawa. Up to Sozanov. His pass to Talbot. One man to beat. Talbot scores! Far side. Low on Rob Zepp. Power play goal for the Ottawa 67s.
He is on fire tonight for the 67s. Look at the jump in his legs. Right here, he explodes with the puck. Head up. Evans now have a stranglehold on the Plymouth Whalers. 2-0. Nothing Zepp could do on that play. He just placed it perfectly.
It had nowhere else to go.
Just a beautiful goal scorer's goal from the captain.
Tied up by two Whalers. Savage came in there, and here comes Plymouth. 3-on-2. Barrowski with Jarrett and Stewart. Centered in front. Scores! Preston Mitzi. Left alone in front. And Plymouth climbs to within one. Picked off by Jarrett, centered in front. Ottawa can't get a rope. Bounce off the leg. Whalers. Third zone. The Ottawa 67s win the 2001 OHL Championship.
There's Brian Kilray, Zenon Konopka handing him the cup.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Given this bombshell news out of the United States, some people are asking, could that happen here? Could that happen here? Now, I don't know if the Canadian situation is really comparable. That's just my own opinion. Here you have an overtly partisan court, the United States Supreme Court. It's apparently, according to the Political Report, going to set aside this 49-year-old precedent and say it's a state issue, that it's up to each individual state, and they'll have their own laws about abortion. We're not really in the same place in here. This whole issue in Canada about the division of powers when it comes to regulating access to abortion services has been argued at the Supreme Court of Canada. And the case is, they've tried to make the case at the provincial level for a long time that it should be up to the provinces to make rules about abortion services because it's a medical procedure and healthcare is in the domain of the provinces. They've tried to make that case, and it's been the losing argument. Nova Scotia was the last province to do that at the Supreme Court of Canada. It lost. And we don't have a law to overturn. Okay, there is no law. Now, Parliament could write a law. Could write a bill and try and pass it into law. The last time it tried to do that was 1990, and it failed to get through the Senate. And no other government has ever tried. So that we're coming from a different place here. Brenda in Richmond. Brenda, good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Yeah, hi, Brenda.
I feel that abortion is wrong, that it is murder, because the baby in the womb is completely formed at 8 weeks. It has a heartbeat, and I feel it's wrong to just kind of cut off the head, the arms and legs of that precious little baby.
Right.
And I feel that eventually it will be unturned, that we will have truth and righteousness in this country for the little baby.
So you view this as a positive development then?
Oh, most definitely.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
So
Okay.
I just
All
feel
right.
that the baby in the womb is a human being and it should have rights. The baby should be protected.
Yes. Okay.
You know, it's got a heartbeat. It's moving in the womb, and even at 8 weeks, I was so shocked.
So you're saying, yeah, I heard you. Yeah. So you think you view this as a positive development, and if it happened here, you'd be pleased.
Most definitely.
Yes, most definitely. Okay, Brenda, thank you.
The baby should have rights. You know, it is a human being.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's been argued, ma'am, at the Supreme Court. Hasn't been the winning argument, but it has been argued. Adam, Brockville. Adam.
G'day, first-timer. Thanks for
First-timer, okay. Thank you.
Your question is whether it would happen here, right?
Could happen here, yeah.
I don't think it's possible because we have more of a separation, I think, between church and state, and I think that's kind of what it boils down to there is they don't have that separation. Their nation under God and all that stuff. It's kind of the way that they think there, and a lot of these senators that are in power down there intertwine their religion with their beliefs, and they think they should impose them on everybody else. That's the core. I don't think we have that in Canada, other than you hear Doug Ford occasionally saying, God be with you or whatever. We don't really
God bless Ontario or whatever. Yeah.
I think that's the main difference between the two. Whether it's right or wrong scientifically, that's up for debate. When is a child a child? I don't think a heartbeat constitutes anybody being alive. I mean, you can be.
Well, that's what this bill, this whole thing at the Supreme Court here in the United States is all about. One of these so-called heartbeat bills that have become very popular in U.S. state politics. They're called the heartbeat bills.
Yeah, so I mean, does a heartbeat constitute you being alive?
I don't really get the sense that that a lot of people are craving to jump right back in and have some raging debate about access to abortion, Adam. You know what I mean? Maybe in parts of the United States they are.
Yeah.
I don't get the sense that that's the case.
I think it's a settled issue here, but there it's always been kind of a heated thing, and I think it does boil back to theology being involved in the politics, unfortunately.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you, Adam. Yeah, maybe more spiritual. Maybe. As for the Conservatives, I suspect all the Conservative candidates will be asked about this. I really do. Sure. We have politicians that are tweeting about it already. There's a tweet out there now. Jagmeet Singh is tweeting about this right now. Andrea Horwath, was it a tweet, David, or a statement? Something.
It was a formal statement.
Oh, formal statement, right?
Media,
so Canadian politicians are already kind of weighing in on this situation in the United States. As for the Conservative Party of Canada, I don't think they're in any mood to go down this road. And I think if they were to even try, it would be such a non-starter with Canadians. It would be the end of the Conservative Party. I really do think that. As there might be a Conservative Party, but it would be the end of a viable Conservative Party. It would no longer be considered. It couldn't be considered a government in waiting, a viable national alternative to the Liberals, if they ever thought they could write and pass a new abortion law, because there's no law right now. That's the big difference. This whole thing at the U.S. Supreme Court is about a law, a law in Mississippi. There's no law in Canada to overturn, to toss aside, to rule unconstitutional. We already ruled the law to be unconstitutional. It was the law of 1969. Hold on. Let's not take that one. Let's take line one, David, if you can. Take line one, please. Thank you. In Perth, Carol, in Perth. Go ahead.
Oh, good morning, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Carol.
First-time caller.
Appreciate it.
I went to Sussex University in the 60s, and I can remember abortion parties, if you like. We would gather in a bathroom with a girl thought she was pregnant, or she would sit in a boiling hot tub of water, and we would drink gin. And if we go back to those days, I despair, because I don't only think it's about the abortion issue. I think certain female rights are being eroded. Mm-hmm. If you look at the British Parliament right now, with all the misogynistic media coverage on MPs watching
pornography.
Pornography.
Yeah.
So I think, I think we have to be very careful as women to make sure that overall our rights are not eroded. And yes, I wouldn't have an abortion myself.
Right.
I agree with that. But who is going to take care of these unwanted babies when they when we eventually
Carol, if I could just interrupt, I just want to interrupt just for a second. What does it? What would it solve? Let's say a provincial government said, and this is all in theory. Let's say Prince Edward Island said we're banning abortion in Prince Edward Island, and they passed a law. What would happen? Women who needed that procedure, what would they do? They would go to New Brunswick, or they would go to Nova Scotia, right, or something like that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you have money or a backing, you would just go to a legislation where
it's legal.
Was legal.
Yeah.
It's the same if I want knee surgery and I was on a waiting list, I would go to Droitwich Spa Hospital in England, where the soccer players go.
Right.
If you've got money, it's you can get whatever you want when you want it. If you don't, you don't. And I do notice, just piggybacking a little bit on the conservative thoughts on abortion, I do notice that Pierre Poilievre's oldest child has his mother's surname, which is quite interesting. So I think I really am concerned that this could be the beginning of the end for some female rights. I know in my generation, we fought tooth and nail to get certain
you're right,
freedoms.
Carol, but the Campaign Life Coalition, which is kind of the leading pro-life group in Canada, said Pierre Poilievre is not one of us.
No,
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, I mean...
He doesn't pass their purity test or whatever, so...
Little babies, yes, it's all very emotional, but I'm thinking of the poor women, especially in Mississippi or wherever. What are they going to do?
What are they going to do?
Where are they going to go?
What are they going to do? Yeah. Good, Carol. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent call. And it's stop. Halftime. We'll pick it up right after the news, I promise you. At 750-1310, Rob Snow Show, City News.
The Calgary Stampede is a world-renowned festival celebrating wrangling, bull riding, and everything cowboy. But did you know that many people credit its origins to a Black Canadian? Take a minute to meet John Ware. The word cowboy has racist roots. Before the American Civil War, white ranchers were called cowhands, but the enslaved black men and women working alongside them were actually referred to as cowboys to infantilize and disrespect black ranchers. The legend of cowboy John Ware is full of impressive feats and awe-inspiring skill, including the ability to train even the wildest broncos and easily hold a horse on its back. But the real story of John Ware is one that starts from more humble beginnings. Ware was born into slavery in the United States, gaining his freedom towards the end of the American Civil War in 1865. Ware's skills with cattle ranching developed as he traveled throughout the United States, eventually settling in a town southwest of present-day Calgary, Alberta, which made him one of the first black pioneers in the prairies. Over time, news of Ware and his amazing cowboy skills began to spread, and people came from across North America to witness his horsemanship and skills as a rancher. Eventually, Ware went on to own many of his own ranches. In 1892, he became the first man in Western Canada to earn the title of steer wrestler, and Ware's feats in local contests set the stage for the Calgary Stampede Rodeo we know today. In September of 1905, Ware was killed in a freak accident with his horse, and more than 10,000 mourners from across the region attended his funeral, making it one of the largest in Alberta history. Though his true story is difficult to separate from the legends around him, Ware's status as a respected forefather of cowboy skill continues to be celebrated today. Ware has dedicated monuments across Alberta, including several sites near his first ranch, a Calgary school in his namesake, and a building at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 12 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. Making the pitch. The fundraising chair and the head of the Ottawa Hospital are before the Finance and Economic Development Committee in the city today. They're asking the city to contribute to construction of the new civic hospital. Both Roger Greenberg and Cameron Love say there have been instances in the past where the city has contributed to that provincial responsibility, like donating the land for the Riverside campus. Ontario Premier Doug Ford set to meet with the Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell today, 3 o'clock this afternoon. This will officially start the provincial election. She will likely accept the recommendation to dissolve Queen's Park, and the writs for the provincial election can then be officially signed. The campaign expected to begin tomorrow, though, for the June 2nd vote. A man in his 60s sustained significant burns to his arms and legs in a trailer fire. The fire service and paramedics called to a trailer on Dunning Road in the East End just before 8 this morning. The man was transferred to hospital in stable condition. Thousands of people attending the funeral for Thurso native and Montreal Canadian star hockey player Guy Lafleur. The church will be packed. Thousands have lined the streets in front of a Montreal church this morning. You can watch that ceremony live on Sportsnet. City News Time, 10:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
And it's a heavy-duty one today. Could it happen here? A lot of people are asking, could it happen here? Or they're stating, matter-of-factly, it could happen here. Major news report out of the United States that the U.S. Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade. The ruling that declared restrictive state regulation of abortion was unconstitutional. So, could the same thing happen here? Limits on access to abortion. Limits on access to abortion. I don't know. There'd have to be a law, first of all. There would have to be a bill. It would have to be passed through the House of Commons, through the Senate. It would have to withstand a charter challenge. Arguments would have to be made to the Supreme Court. And when it comes to that, gosh, a lot of arguments have been made in many cases before the Supreme Court of Canada on this. Father's rights, fetal rights, division of powers. All of those arguments, they've all been made. None of them have ever convinced the High Court to deny access to a woman seeking the procedure. Anything could happen, I guess. I just don't think Canadians are pining to renew a debate on one of the most divisive issues of our lifetimes. There are so many other things that are much more top of mind here in the year 2022. Number one being the cost of living, the war in Ukraine, housing prices, food insecurity, interest rates, the state of the healthcare system, the state of long-term care, the economy, jobs. This issue is not on the radar of most Canadians. I'm not a soldier in your culture war. And I don't think most Canadians want to sign up to be soldiers in the culture war either. I hate this topic. But hey, biggest news story in the world. Can't ignore it. Rob Snow Show on City News. Beverly in Ottawa. Beverly, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi there.
I'm so glad that I live in Canada where there is no law because I think it's terrible. I personally wouldn't have an abortion, but I think that people should be allowed to choose. Women should be allowed to choose what they want to do with their body.
Okay. All right.
That's my firm belief.
Beverly, this news this morning, you read this news this morning, it's pretty big news, right?
It's huge.
Huge news, right?
And it's scary. I find it very scary.
You find it scary, okay.
Yeah, because I think anything that affects a woman, I think should be voted on by women. I don't like that we fought all these years. I mean, I'm not of the age where I'm not a hippie and I didn't fight all that stuff. Right. But I appreciate.
But you feel you benefited from it, right? You feel
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the fact that we should be talking about what you said, food shortages and all of that. I don't think the United States, a big power world or a big power country, should be going down this road. It sets the wrong tone. It really does.
All right. Hey, thank you, Beverly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Diane in Stittsville. Diane.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Diane.
Hi. So, freedom. That's been last week and for a couple of months. Freedom. That's what people want.
Yes.
They want the freedom to smoke marijuana to kill their babies.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah.
Come on now.
They do.
You're being
Some
ridiculous.
of them.
You're
Some
being
of them.
ridiculous. Diane, usually make more sense than that.
Well, I'm really concerned about women who are raped. I am concerned about women who are raped.
Right.
But we're 300,000 people short in our country. Why do you think we're short people in our country? Okay, so Pierre Poilievre, that's who I'm voting for.
Right.
But my second vote is for Lewis. Can she beat the Liberals? Probably not.
No,
but I'm
not a
voting
chance.
for her second. Okay, we live in a country where most people don't believe in God.
Right.
So of course they don't think abortion. But we have rights in our country.
Sure.
We have rights to
Yes,
kill
we
our
do.
unborn babies.
Well,
and you know what, Rob? My last point.
Okay.
I am concerned about Ukraine. I've sent money there.
Yes.
I've sent money to Samaritan's Purse.
Yeah.
That are on the ground. So yes, today I'm more concerned about Ukraine. But
Okay.
I'm sad that our country kills babies.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
yeah.
Rob.
All right, Diane. Whew. See what I mean? I mean, in the Morgenthau ruling, liberty, the whole issue of liberty was front and center. Liberty, freedom, conscience. It wasn't just about Section 7, life, liberty, security of the person, but also liberty in a free and democratic society. Liberty. Okay? Everybody wants to talk about freedom. Liberty, the Supreme Court wrote, does not require, I'm quoting here, does not require the state to approve of the personal decisions made by its citizens. It does, however, require the state to respect them. Conscience. It wrote that to terminate a pregnancy is essentially a matter of conscience, and that to criminalize such a decision is a violation of freedom of conscience. And what it concluded was the 1969 law was unconstitutional and said, Parliament, it's your turn. You want to write a new law? Go ahead and write a new law. But you must keep in mind, we are in the age of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms now. And the Mulroney government set about to write a new law. And it was the last government that ever tried. It tried to pass a new law not once, but twice. First time around, the bill failed to pass by a very large margin. But the second time around, it was a different story. It was very close. Very close on C-43. People maybe forget how close Canada came to having an abortion law. It would have been a criminal offense to induce an abortion unless it was done by or under the direction of a physician who considered the woman's life or health to be threatened. And health was defined as physical health, mental health, psychological health. It passed through the House of Commons. It was a free vote. The cabinet was whipped, but other than that, it was a free vote in the spring of 1990. And it passed 140 to 131. And then it went to the Senate, and it was a tie. 43 to, it was also a free vote, and it was 43 to 43, which meant the bill was defeated. And that was the last time a Canadian government tried. And we have no law. We've kind of been in a status quo since then. The High Court said the 1969 law was not constitutional. Parliament, you can write a new law. And Parliament never did. I only bring that up for history's sake. Not because I think there should be a new law. It's just the history. Barb in Ottawa. Barb, you're on City News.
Hi.
Hi, Barb.
I'm afraid that women's rights are going to be compromised on choice of abortion.
Okay.
Years ago, being a child, I saw one flash of a woman in a hotel who had an abortion, and it haunted me till this day. Seeing her on her knees, hunched over, bleeding to death. She had bled to death. The police had found her in a hotel. Is this rights for women to have an abortion like this? For Diane and Brenda, who are against abortion, are you going to take in babies that are not wanted? Are you going to be okay for babies to be thrown in dumpsters and things like that, or foster homes? And so I don't understand. People have fought so hard for this. Women's rights are important just as men's rights are important. So where would we go if we lose the rights for our own bodies?
Right, and isn't that, you see, that's one of the key issues. Where would you go?
But what, a hotel and have somebody take, well,
let's say it was, I mean, this is already being raised, for example, in the United States, okay, where you have some U.S. states very restrictive so-called heartbeat bills, right? Yep. 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 15 weeks, whatever the case is, right? So what does a woman do there? Let's say she can't get, in this case, it's Mississippi. Well, she's going to go to another state, right? Or underground. Yeah, the fear is underground, but maybe to another state. So
not only hemorrhage to death, because it is a difficult procedure, but at the same time, infections and all kinds of
yes, ma'am.
Complications like that. Right. It's a horrible thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Barb. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Let's take this call. Steve, Ottawa. Steve, you're on City News.
Hey, Rob, how's it going?
It goes. Sir, thank you.
All right, well, this whole thing's got my baloney meter going off. I don't think it's going to happen here. I don't think it's going to happen in the States. I think the midterms are coming up, and they want to rile up their base and get some support. So they're just, it's funny that it's just some random report, like it's about as believable as the Nick Sandman or the,
I don't know. Politico's pretty pretty legit news organization there, right?
Let's see what the Supreme Court actually does. I mean, there's no news here. It's all hyperbole. It's also,
hyperbole.
Like,
okay.
Like, this is why the news is losing all credibility. You know what I mean? Because they take some random leaked story from some unnamed person and then blow it up across the media and get everyone all bent out of shape. It's like,
you think it's politically motivated?
It's 100% politically motivated.
Because
all they want to do is get the Republicans, the midterms are coming and they know they're going to do terrible. So they need to come up with some issue that's, a non-issue really.
To motivate the Democrats, you mean?
To motivate the Democrats, 100%.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, that's all this is.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think it's going to happen here. I don't think it's going to happen there. I think the whole thing is just hogwash.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's about as believable as Trump Russia or the Nick Sandman story. And
Sandman,
that's it. You know what
I don't know the Nick
Sandman
story, but okay.
Nick
all right.
Sandman, the guy in the MAGA hat, he sued CNN for $250 million.
Oh, that guy, the young kid there. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, sure. Okay, Steve, thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right, he thinks it's a fake story. I don't know. If that's fake, Politico is putting its whole reputation on the line there. That's a lot to put at risk. In Hull, Kevin.
Hey, good morning.
Hi.
I'm going to stick with the question literally and answer could rather than should.
Could. Yeah, and could. Yeah.
And I say the only way I could see it ever happening here is, as with the aging population and massive immigration of people who import religion that would eventually lead them to voting towards this.
Okay.
Like, for example, I think Philippines has been the most recent, the country with the most, and they're largely Catholic. So if trends like this, but giant spikes in immigration that take care of older population, it could sway, because this is based on religion, right, for the most part, this issue. And so we would have to have a massive demographic shift, and I don't see grassroots all of a sudden. The churches are,
and you would have to design a bill in such a way that it would withstand any kind of charter challenge, which would be very, very difficult to do.
Well, the bill that you just described during the Mulroney years, that sounds to me like it had quite a lot of leeway based on the psychological mental health aspect, right? Mm-hmm. So this, if a woman says, I'm depressed because I'm pregnant and I want to have an abortion, I mean, there certainly would be plenty of physicians who would accept that, and then that could be another challenge. Well, was she really that mentally, affected or psychologically? So I don't see it happening. The only possible avenue to me would be massive immigration from countries with various religions who would support this.
Okay.
But I'm not going to get into the
the morality or whatever. Yeah.
I
Okay.
would say that I would like to point out, being from the States, that this decision that Politico's reporting is based on minority rule, right? Based on how their Senate, they have 2 from each state. It gives tremendous power, and they're the ones who who confirm those judges, as well as most of these judges on that court were appointed by presidents who lost the popular vote.
Okay.
Right, so it's very much a minority, flawed system that they have. We have our own flaws. I believe both countries should get rid of the Senate completely.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. A little, maybe outside of what I understand. 10:46. My gosh, it's heavy duty stuff today. Heavy duty. We'll be right back. Rob Snow Show, City News.
It really is a tremendous source of excitement and joy for the theater staff and I to welcome artists finally back to the theaters. It was a tremendous pleasure to sit on the selection committee. We really have something to cater to all musical tastes, from trippy art pop to straight ahead rock and roll to soul and funk. But it's huge for us to be able to welcome local artists back into the theaters to showcase their amazing talents for people here.
Up to the top is where I'm headed and I'm going.
You know what? I've checked out some of the stuff already before doing this. I've been hyped and ready to do this because it's definitely being done on a major level. And, I'm here seeing it in person right now. And I'm like, wow, this is what it is, man. I'm happy to be here.
This kind of concert series promotes music and gives us newcomers or even like new bands a big chance to showcase their talents and share their music with the world.
It's amazing that OMIC has organized this and given an opportunity for artists to perform, but also be part of something that I wouldn't be able to create this just on my own. So everybody's talents comes together to create something great.
It says a lot about the city that they are engaging the processes that get those musicians out and get them in front of people, and the music is getting heard. So we don't have a thing where everybody's the best kept secret, right? We're sort of breaking through that wall a lot, and which is exactly what we need.
Well, first of all, I'm really grateful for this opportunity. For me, it's a little bit like being officially part of the local artist community in Ottawa. And it's like my first real big show where I'm gonna be performing my own song, so it's really exciting.
What the hell's going on? Why you still holding on?
It's a great opportunity for us artists to be able to really get a reach to an audience and a good quality audience too. I'm just happy that I can be involved. I'm happy that I can add value. It's top tier for sure.
It really is like a dream come true, especially having so many restrictions in the last couple of years, not being able to jam because we couldn't get together, and then to be able to do it in a beautiful venue like this with the seats in the background and just the whole entourage of it, and really feeling like we're able to put on a real show for the first time in a long time. It's just fantastic. It really is great.
It's time to talk back
on The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
So some are declaring it could happen here. Others are asking, could it happen here? After the big news report, United States Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade, according to Politico. Roe v. Wade, 1973, declared restrictive state regulation of abortion unconstitutional. So could the same thing happen here? Limits on accessing abortion services. How would you craft a law that would withstand a charter challenge? Because, that's the big difference. Here, there... In the United States example, there's a law, and there has to be a court ruling on the merits of this law. But we don't have a law in Canada. You could write a law. Right? But arguments have been made on abortion access, things like fetal rights. When is a fetus a person under Canadian law? Only as a matter of law, not a matter of morality or science, just a matter of law, legally. The courts have said repeatedly in this country, the fetus is not a person and therefore is not included in the word everyone, as in the charter where it says everyone has the right to life, liberty, security of the person. In the charter, everyone. Always the answer from the courts has been no on that. Most often cited case, probably Barrowski versus Attorney General of Canada, from the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal. There was another case involving a woman from Quebec. The father was seeking an injunction against an abortion, and this was part of the argument. Fetus is a person, went to the Supreme Court. Again, the Supreme Court said, fetus is not a person. As the law is written, Parliament would have to write a new law. So that's one thing. I talked about the division of powers. That's been tried. The thinking goes, if abortion is a healthcare procedure performed in a clinical environment, then that makes it provincial jurisdiction because of healthcare in division of powers in the Constitution. A lot of provinces have tried that over the years, that it's a healthcare issue. And there have been times when provincial governments have made their own plans to restrict access to abortion services and withhold provincial health care insurance coverage for the procedure. Every time a provincial government has tried to do that, it's failed at the Supreme Court of Canada. It tried to do that in 1989 because the government of Nova Scotia did not want a Morgentaler clinic in Halifax. And the Nova Scotia government passed a law that said abortions could only be performed in hospitals. And that law stated if it was done at a clinic, then the Nova Scotia health insurance would not pay for it. And the Supreme Court justices pretty much laughed that right out of court. And it said the entirety of the issue doesn't revolve around the delivery of a healthcare service. It's a matter of the criminal law, because prohibitions, restrictions, fines, they're all criminal penalties. And that's a matter of the criminal law. And the Supreme Court said the provincial government was using the healthcare delivery argument for cover. And what it was really trying to do was enforce criminal law. And criminal law is a federal jurisdiction. Settled in 1993. Go-to precedent ever since when it comes to the whole division of powers argument in this country. Just the history, folks. Just so you know, the history. Kim in Barrhaven. Kim.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, Kim.
I always get nervous with these big topics.
Oh boy, heavy-duty stuff, right?
It is.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good with confrontation, but I know what I believe.
Okay, so
I told the gentleman who answered the phone, I told him no, but I meant yes, because I was thinking backwards. Anyway, yes, I do hope that Canada also follows the overturn of Roe versus Wade. Okay. I believe that the babies are a person from the point of conception.
Okay.
And even you were talking about the courts and whatnot, and what I'm finding, hearing, is that there's courts who are recognizing that the infant in the womb is a person. And that's something from the Nova Scotia shooting. They acknowledged that there were 23 victims in that country's worst government of Nova Scotia worst mass shooting. Took place over 2 years ago. One of those 23 victims was an unborn child. And I find that awesome, because they are recognizing that this is a preborn baby. It is one of the victims, and it's. I don't know. I just think
I understand. In the law, that's not the case, though.
Well, what about the court of Nova Scotia? Like, what happened?
I'm telling you that whenever this case has been made, is a fetus a person? It's never been, or an unborn child is a person. There's a clear definition for that.
So that is what we
in the criminal law
pro-life people need to work on, is to get that.
And they've tried to work on that.
And we're going to continue to work on it, I guess.
Yes. The pro-life movement in this country has said, look, if we're going to make any progress on restricting access to abortion services, we have to start with the criminal code. We have to start with the criminal code. And because the definition, basically the definition of when life begins is in the criminal code.
Okay.
When does a human being become a human being?
Right.
When is it in a living state?
Okay.
Is when it has completely proceeded in a living state from the body of its mother.
Hence,
whether or not it has breathed, whether or not it has had
of the body of the mother.
Okay.
Do you know that?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
And they will abort a child being birthed.
Well, I don't think that happens in Canada.
I don't know. But wherever it happens, it's not right.
No. Okay, fair enough. But I'm just telling you, we have, in the criminal code, there's a very specific definition we have to run there of when a child becomes a human being. And it's in the criminal code, and the definition is there. It's section 223(1), as a matter of fact, if you want to kind of Google it. Last call. Catherine in Lanark. Catherine.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
I want to say I'm pro-choice.
Okay.
But I believe there should be an abortion law.
Okay.
Late-term abortions absolutely sicken me.
Sure.
What does it say about a society that we're struggling to keep a 6-month-old baby alive being born prematurely, and meanwhile throw another one in the corner? People talk about women's rights. I also ask about women's responsibilities.
Okay.
There is absolutely no reason to have an unwanted pregnancy nowadays, especially one that you take to 6 months. I don't mind early-term abortions, like early-term abortions. There's a morning after pill.
Okay.
So women, be responsible for your own health and reproduction, and if you made a mistake, go get the pill.
Okay.
If you made a mistake, go get an early abortion. There's no reason to let it drag on to this point. And like I said, term abortions are horrible.
All right. Thank you, Catherine, for having your say. Thanks to all the women who called. Very helpful. And everyone who called, but especially the women. Very helpful this hour to try and understand your frame of mind on this extraordinary news day. We'll be right back after the news. Rob Snow Show, City News.
1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 12 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The election call will officially come tomorrow after the Premier visits the Lieutenant Governor, Elizabeth Dowdeswell, this afternoon at 3 o'clock. The details on the provincial election timeline. Here's City News Queen's Park reporter Richard Southern.
It seems like the election's been on for weeks now, but it's about to officially get underway. Premier Ford will walk out of his offices at Queen's Park at 3 o'clock this afternoon and walk down to Elizabeth Dowdeswell's suite. She's the Lieutenant Governor. He's going to ask her to dissolve the legislature. The election, though, won't officially begin until tomorrow. It'll be a 29-day campaign with Ontarians heading to the polls on June 2nd. Although there will be 10 days of early voting ahead of that. The party leaders from the NDP and the Liberals are already out this morning making their early pitches to voters. Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca announcing his environment plan, planning to cut emissions in half by 2030. NDP leader Andrea Horwath was at a North York bake shop announcing some of her campaign priorities. She told reporters she's ready to go.
Our party is stronger than it has literally ever been. We have a well-resourced campaign, a well-organized campaign. We've got lots of volunteers. We've got lots of excitement. We've got lots of energy.
Polls, though, point to the NDP falling. They have just 21% support right now. Polls have the Doug Ford Conservatives poised to win another majority, but just a slight one. The PCs with 36% support, according to the latest polls. Richard Southern, City News.
City News time, 11:03, and now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
For Ottawa, the Valley, Smiths Falls, today a mainly cloudy day, slight chance of showers, a high about 18 degrees. Tonight, periods of rain and 11, and tomorrow, light rain in the morning, but then some clearing should turn into a pretty good Wednesday afternoon, the high 17. For today, the high 18.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 12 degrees. City News time, 11:04. The chair of the Ottawa Hospital fundraising campaign for the new Civic was in front of Fedco this morning, asking the city to contribute to construction. Now, Roger Greenberg says they're about halfway through this campaign and says people are very supportive. He pointed out instances in the past where the city has contributed to hospital construction, like the Riverside campus that was built on city-donated land. Greenberg says he is confident a city contribution from all residents would be welcome.
I know that working together, the Ottawa Hospital and the city can come up with a proposal that will allow for a contribution of $150 million on behalf of all citizens and businesses of Ottawa.
Now, the Ottawa Hospital CEO says there hasn't been a new build in healthcare in Ottawa for decades. Cameron Love says this new hospital would feature great minds tackling medical issues of the day. It would rival any centre across Canada and, in his opinion, possibly around the world. A man in his 60s sustained significant burns to his arms and legs in a trailer fire. Fire service called the paramedics in when a trailer on Dunning Road in the East End caught fire just before 8 o'clock this morning. The man was transferred to hospital. He was listed in stable condition. American President Joe Biden has reacted to the draft opinion leaked to Politico. It suggests a Supreme Court in the U.S. could be poised to overturn a landmark 1973 case, Roe versus Wade, that legalized abortion in the United States.
President Biden says in a statement he believes a woman's right to choose is, quote, fundamental. He says that the Roe decision has been the law of the land for almost 50 years and, quote, basic fairness and the stability of our law demand that it not be overturned. The president says his administration is preparing options for a response to what he calls the, quote, continued attack on abortion and reproductive rights, depending on a ruling by the Supreme Court. Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
And 1310 AM.
He's my friend on the right side of things, syndicated columnist and former speechwriter for Stephen Harper. Michael Taube is back with us on a very big news day. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. Just as a As an observer of the news, Michael, a keen observer of the news.
Okay.
This news story in the United States from Politico.
Yeah.
It's right up there for bombshells, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It just be simply because it's on a social issue. And whenever you have something on abortion, capital punishment, gay marriage, and something like that, it's going to trigger a lot of people, and it's going to cause a bit of an eruption. I mean, we obviously use the term bombshell quite a lot, especially in politics, but this definitely in the U.S. is a big one.
Like a leak from the Supreme Court. A leaked judgment from the Supreme Court of the United States. My goodness. So politically speaking, U.S. politics midterm year. Unpopular president.
Yep.
Losses expected for the Democrats. Right? In both the House and the Senate. That's not unusual that they would lose in the midterms anyway. Any party.
Most do.
But I wonder if it could become a turning point for the Democrats at a critical time, whether this is an issue that could unite Democrats around a cause, motivate their voters. Look at what they're doing to our country. 49 years, this has been the law, the law of the land in the United States. Settled law. And look at what they're doing. What do you think about that as a kind of a narrative, Mike? What do you think?
Other than the childish comment that laws are settled when no law is actually ever settled, just because you get a law that you like or that you agree with, it doesn't mean that it's set in stone forever. Even within our own Constitution in Canada, laws can be challenged. Constitutionally, judicially, there are always ways to do it. It's just a question of whether, one, the political climate denotes that there's an ability to actually bring it down, and two, whether there's the political will to actually bring it down as well. In the case of Roe v. Wade, yes, it's been around on the books for many years, but it has been a lightning rod of controversy, I think it's safe to say, in the U.S. ever since it came in. And many polls have shown that the numbers have gone in terms of those who are pro-choice, pro-life, and just the position on abortion in general. I could go through a litany of them. I can think of a few offhand, which have just shown wild changes and wild swings up and down. But generally speaking, the United States is heavily split on this issue, much the same way that its politics tends to be heavily split between the two major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. So, in fact, if anything, those two things are sort of walking hand in hand. I mean, again, it's unsurprising that Joe Biden, the U.S. president, who's a Democrat, and that made senior Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and others are now speaking out about it because they see something that they inherently agree with and that it could come tumbling down. Now, Biden, the president, has obviously said, that this would be a terrible decision by the U.S. Supreme Court, and he's tried to suggest that, well, if it were to happen, we need to codify the law. We need to ensure that the Senate votes in favor of codification to make abortion permanent. However, it's not quite that simple. It sounds simple, but it's not. To codify a law in the United States, Rob, you need 60 seats in the Senate. As of right now, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans have enough strength and enough popularity to even reach anything close to that number. So it's bluster at this stage. But to go back to your point, will this motivate the base? Will this motivate Democrats, liberals, progressives, the whole cornucopia that's under that political tent to come out and vote? Yes, maybe it'll obviously entice some people to do it. I don't think it's going to be necessarily an issue that's going to, one, change hearts and minds that considerably, and B, I don't think it's going to really change what's about to happen in a few months' time, come November, because in the end, the country is so split and so heavily split down the middle that I really don't see, for example, a lot of Republicans who, whether they are pro-life or pro-choice, they tend to agree that the way Roe v. Wade was brought in and the way that it's managed is improper. It really should be states' rights that actually does it. So each individual state makes their own policy about abortion and manages therein, which means that obviously the policy can change with a change in government, for example. I don't really see anything much happening other than frustration from Democrats, frustration from Democratic politicians like the U.S. president, and a lot of bluster until the U.S. Supreme Court decides whether that leaked plan that they have or leaked ruling actually becomes an official law. So we'll see.
Okay, yeah. Boy, with those 3 Supreme Court picks that Trump had,
it helps.
That is something that will outlive Trumpism or Donald Trump, right? I was speaking with some academics who, while those picks were happening, and you know how U.S. Supreme Court picks and the hearings that go along with it, what a circus it is, and they were saying there are people who vote for Trump not because they like Trump, but because they want a conservative Supreme Court.
They're right. I agree. There were some people who were like that.
There are people who are like, I can take or leave Trump. I just want him to appoint conservatives to the Supreme Court.
I concur. And that was actually one of the great advantages that Trump had. He had said right off from the very bat that he would nominate judges to the Supreme Court who are in line with the views and values of Republicans. And that includes, for the most part, not all, but most, a pro-life position.
Yeah. Okay. So, look, we have Canadian politicians who are already reacting to this. For example, Jagmeet Singh put out a 60-second video. Do you want to play a little? I haven't heard this. Well, we may as well play a little bit of it. Sure. Do you have some of that, David? All right, David's going to take a couple of seconds here. Okay. As well, Andrea Horwath, the Ontario Democrat leader, she issued a formal statement about this. But you have it, David? Yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead, David. Yep.
I want to start off today just reflecting on the leak in the United States and what it must feel like for people in the United States, for women to wake up to see their fundamental right to have a legal abortion potentially and very dangerously threatened. It looks like it will be overturned, and that's something deeply concerning. We know that when abortion rights are denied or when abortion services are denied, the result is women die. And it's deeply concerning to see that happen. In Canada, the right is secure, but what we're seeing as a trend and as a problem is the access is in question. Many communities do not have access to legal abortions in their communities, and women have to drive hundreds of kilometers. And so that's something we have to continue to fight to expand, to make sure access is there. The right is important, but what's even more important than the right is access to that right. And so in Canada, we're going to continue to fight to make sure people do have.
All right, that's interesting. Access, access was one of the original reasons why Pierre Trudeau's abortion law was struck down and found unconstitutional in the charter age by the Supreme Court, because the access wasn't equitable in those days when most abortions were performed in hospitals and you had to go before this committee of 3 doctors and all of that.
That's right.
It was found to be inequitable because, I can find a hospital that will perform this procedure in a big city like Toronto or Montreal, but not in, a small town or let alone rural Canada or remote Canada or Indigenous Canada. So that was one of the reasons the Canadian law was struck down and has never been replaced, which is the big difference here in Canada, right? We have no law.
Nope.
Right.
We have nothing.
Nothing.
In fact, interestingly, and this is true, and it's not because I'm a conservative saying it, the only political party that doesn't have an official position on abortion written right into their party policies and principles is the Conservative Party of Canada. Look it up. We don't have it. And it's interesting that actually that one of the right-leaning parties doesn't. Now, in fairness, I should actually backtrack and say that I don't know if the People's Party of Canada has anything specifically either. But generally speaking, the parties that typically put it into their constitution are on the left, again, because of what I said before, because they believe in the right to abortion. They believe that their members should follow suit in that order. In fact, as we may remember, the current prime minister of this country stated directly that candidates who are pro-choice are the only ones who would be approved by the Liberal Party to run for them. And that policy, as far as I know, is still in place, and the NDP have a similar policy as well. The Greens may even too, for all I know. The end result is that Jagmeet Singh, Andrea Horwath, and whoever else speaks out in Canada is a meaningless voice in this debate, because what we think in Canada does not mean anything and is not going to be paid attention to by what the United States does. Ultimately, in the end, U.S. Republicans and U.S. Democrats will figure out their own affairs alone. However, this is a democracy, and obviously Mr. Singh is allowed to make his statements, much as Ms. Horvath is allowed to make her statements. Much the same way that you and I can discuss this issue, too. But in the end, ultimately, this is not a major issue in Canada, and we know this. You know, for the record, I actually do lean pro-life. I'm not very strong. I've never taken a very strong position. If you look at my history, I haven't talked about it much. I haven't written about it much. I used to be pro-choice. I switched about 15, 16 years ago over a very difficult road that I had, which took many years to go through. It's not that you snap your fingers and all of a sudden it changes position and pace. And my position has always been that I slightly lean pro-life, but at the same time, I've never believed in restricting abortion for those who wish to do it. I just don't morally agree with it, and I will not defend it at all. But it is your decision to make, which is partially why I agree with states' rights in the United States. That at least allows the governments of the day to make that decision, whether they feel it's important for the state to be managed either in a pro-life or pro-choice direction when it comes to abortion. But in Canada, I don't think this is a major issue, Rob. It's not something that the Conservative Party really, cares about. In fact, most of the leaders or most of the leadership candidates happen to be either pro-choice or relatively quiet on the issue, with the exception of Leslyn Lewis and a couple of others. And as well, the governing parties of the day, or at least the ones who are now currently in this political agreement, the Liberals and the NDP, are pro-choice and obviously believe in the right to abortion. And I just don't think that the political will is here at all.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Either.
I don't think so. I mean, you think about what would have to happen. Like somebody, let's say the Conservatives somehow won the election, they won a majority government. They'd actually have to write a law. They'd have to write a law. The Mulroney government tried to write a law. 1990, they tried to write a law, 32 years ago, right?
That's right.
And
it didn't get.
They had a free vote. We went all through that free vote in the Senate. It failed. Whatever. I just don't think anybody wants to go back and do it again. Well, there will be some people who would love to go back and do it, but I just don't think. I don't think any party wants to. Hey, let's write a new abortion law, right? So, okay, let's move along here. Conservative Party leadership race. Man, oh man, Patrick Brown, very curious what's happening here. Under fire for comparing the situation in Ukraine to the Israel-Palestine issue. The thing is, he's making these very provocative remarks. Mm-hmm. And he's not making them public. They're becoming public in other ways. Like it's something, it's on a Facebook webcast or it's a transcript of an interview on a little news outlet.
Right.
Quote, it's a transcript of a Q&A, an interview that Patrick Brown did on Muslim issues. Mm-hmm. As you, the questioner asked, as you mentioned, in 1 week and a half, Canada was there to help Ukrainian refugees. And now even the military every day, while in Palestine, we have seen for over 70 years in many cities occupied by Israeli forces. Canada hasn't done anything. Do you see double standards here? I do, says Patrick Brown. Mm-hmm. I do, right? Very provocative statement, okay? That he's not making in any of his speeches or anything, but he's making in these interviews. And he's talking about we're too close to the United States in our foreign policy. I won't move the embassy the way the previous two leaders have promised to move the embassy, the way the Americans have promised to move their embassy, the Israeli embassy.
To Jerusalem, just to be clear.
Right. I bring this up, not because Patrick Brown shouldn't have these opinions, but how he's going about expressing them, because he's not telling it publicly. These are all happening kind of more privately, I think. The Canadian press had a story about he goes into a room of people from Nepal, Nepalese Canadians, and says, vote for me and I'll give you a visa office in Kathmandu.
That's right.
With the Tamils, ethnic minority from Sri Lanka. I'll put an office in Jaffna. And I'll offer you an apology as Prime Minister. Deliver an apology.
I know. Apologizing for the Tamil Tigers, who are a terrorist organization who were put in place when Stephen Harper was Prime Minister and Mr. Brown was sitting there in the caucus.
Can he cash all these checks that he's writing? That's what I mean. That's what I mean. You should have a platform. You should be declaring all of this in literature, not. You're making a promise to everyone who's going to listen. Like, where are you from? Oh, I'm from here. Oh, about that. It's unsavory to me, Mike. I don't know about you, but...
No, these things always come back to bite you. And especially now in the modern age where people have, are citizen journalists and they have iPhones and they can record things, including videos, photos, etc. There's no way to get around this. I mean, obviously, decades ago, it was a little easier, but it isn't now. And besides the fact that Patrick Brown's analogy of comparing the situation Ukraine to Israel, Palestine is so ludicrous. And he's been a friend for many years. That's just a bad comparison. Even if he was slightly misquoted, it's very close. I read the transcript as well, and it's pretty clear what he was trying to say. And the fact that he doesn't want to move, the Canada's embassy into Jerusalem, whereas the United States and several other countries do. I mean, obviously he doesn't have to. He's free to. I don't think it's the right decision, but I mean, that one bothers me less than that sort of comment. And the comment about the Tamils, I mean, and again, it's nothing to do with the Tamil community. It's directly with the Tamil Tigers that basically brought this up. We know that obviously Patrick Brown has strong relations with many ethnic and religious minorities and communities, including the Tamil community. So obviously it works for them, but it's not a good policy at all, especially with, as I said, the position that the Tamil Tigers are banned on the books from a government he sat in. It just looks really bad. Unfortunately, very quickly, when you wrap it all together, when any candidate, including Patrick Brown, says things like this, you're right, then they become beholden to the individual or group they say it to. And even if the forum is not a very big one or a powerful one, like, say, a radio station like yours, TV station like the CBC, CTV Global, etc., it doesn't matter, because if it's on the record and someone has recorded it or asked that question of you, especially in this day and age, they can always go back to it. And if they are frustrated by the decision of a leader, say, to ignore that comment, or they basically just make it, half-assed, so to speak, and then they go on and say something else, or as you alluded to publicly, they either say something different or never talk about it in the first place, it just looks bad. Eventually these receipts will be cashed if you keep giving them out. It's always best for a politician, and maybe this sounds a little naive, but I'll say it anyways, it's always best to watch your tongue as much as you can, and don't promise the moon to everyone, because in the end you can't give them slices of the moon. You can only give them little teeny slivers of things at best. You have to be very careful how you manage your issues, your ideas, your policies, and your promises, both publicly and privately, because in the end it can come back to bite you very hard. And that's what's happening to Patrick Brown today. He made statements that he should never have made, and he's going to pay for it, at least in the news cycle, for a day or two, whether he likes it or not.
Okay. Are you good at camping? You good camper?
I like camping. I wouldn't say I'm great at it.
Scouts Canada surveys 1,000 Canadians about basic outdoor camping skills.
I'm rubbing my...
We are not very good at campers anymore. A key finding showed 23% of Canadians would do the wrong thing should they encounter a black bear in the woods. 8% said they would run. 5% said they would play Metallica on their phone. 5.5% would stare directly into their eyes to scare the bear. 3.2% said they would attack first.
Oh, that's great.
Almost 15% simply said they would not know what to do. The correct thing to do, according to experts, is to slowly back away while keeping the bear in sight and wait for it to leave. When asked which flora from a list of wild plants were safe to eat.
Oh, geez.
And I admit, I don't think I would know what to eat if I was, stuck in the woods. 46% admitted they had no idea. Winterberry and buckthorn, we think they're safe when in fact they are poisonous or toxic.
Winterberry I knew. The other...
Yeah.
Okay.
And This one I found curious. Half of those surveyed, 46.9%, almost half of those surveyed said they don't know how to properly dry wet clothing and camping gear.
Well, jeez.
36% responded correctly with wring out and drape. 7% would make the bad choice of placing items 3 inches from a fire. Oh my gosh. That's from Scouts. That's from the Scouts Canada survey. So we have to work on our camping skills, Mike. Summer's just around the corner.
Clearly. I mean,
right.
I like Metallica, but I would certainly never play it. Reflect there. Yeah, unfortunately, look, I don't think I'd survive either, quite frankly, Rob. But it's amusing. The fact that people were honest about this and made comments like this, and obviously I have to take the Scouts at their word for this study, it's awful. It really shows that people cannot live off the land, and that when we go camping for a day or two, we take our canoes, we have fun, we take some alcohol if we can, we take food, etc. We enjoy ourselves. For a couple of days, I think all of us can survive. But when it comes past that point, unfortunately, when it comes to the nitty gritty of living in the urban wilderness or in the wilderness or in the rural world, many of us just cannot survive. And quite frankly, I couldn't either.
We would either be eaten by a bear, digest poisonous berries, or burn down the tent, Mike. That's where we are.
The bears are coming. Run right to them.
All right, we got to run. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you, Michael. Bye-bye. Michael Taube, syndicated columnist. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Green light, motors on. Need some loving and the feeling is strong. Slow down.
Hi, my name is Kelly Lee Evans, and I am so excited to be performing for Encore Ottawa 3. I think my music really represents me and the message that I feel like I feel like I'm constantly in this search for happiness, and sometimes I'm getting it, like sometimes I'm nailing it, and sometimes I'm just like I'm not, which I think maybe is like the story of so many of us. And I love for my music to have a feeling of joy, but I recognize that you can have sadness as well. So I tend to have music that really floats and moves along human emotions, because that's real life.
Baby, make this feeling last. Try to make magic happen, but you putting up a fight. So I'll be alone.
I was so excited when I found out that I was given this grant to be able to make this concert, because I knew it was going to be the first opportunity that I was able to play these songs for others. This album was recorded really, truly in isolation, in the sense that I wrote the music by myself, and everybody was in their little, homes, recording each of their parts. And so nobody ever got together in a room together to play this music. So you're gonna see, I think, the joy of playing live, of being together. And you're gonna see why I think organizations like Oh Mike exist, so that musicians can be out here in Ottawa creating. And there's one element missing, the live audience is missing, but I know that people at home will definitely feel like what we're trying to put out.
Writing requires attention and focus. No distractions, no moment of unawareness, because one brief moment can cost a lifetime of other moments. Everyone deserves to arrive home.
The Maritime provinces are home to some of the oldest settlements in Canadian history. But did you know that one of the first was actually started by black settlers? Take a minute to learn about the rise and untimely fall of Africville. Black people have lived in Nova Scotia since before the founding of Halifax in 1749, but it wasn't until after the American Revolution in the late 1700s and early 1800s that large groups of Black settlers began to arrive in the province, many of whom were former slaves promised freedom and land in Nova Scotia. What they encountered when they arrived, however, was racist treatment by their white neighbors and government officials. This pushed many Black people to build homes on the outskirts of town instead. But despite the area receiving little support from government officials and lacking necessities like functioning sewage systems, access to clean water, and proper garbage disposals, the tight-knit community persevered, and so Africville was born. For more than 150 years, the small community grew, expanding from just a few homes to a population of over 400 people. Everything changed, however, in 1964 when plans for a new bridge and the idea of urban renewal prompted the municipality to set its sights on Africville's land. Instead of investing in the community, officials approved a relocation program that promised free job training and employment assistance to help residents through relocation. But the reality wasn't so kind. Residents had their belongings moved in city dump trucks, and homes were demolished immediately after their owners left. Of the 400-plus people living in Africville, only 14 residents held clear legal titles to their land, so the rest were only given $500 with the promise of more social aid in the future. Not much else was actually done to support Africville and its residents until 2001, when a United Nations report called for reparations to be paid to the community. In 2010, Halifax Mayor Peter Kelly apologized for the atrocities against Africville as part of a $4.5 million compensation deal. In 2021, Councillor Lindell Smith put forward a 7-part motion to plan for the future of Africville alongside local organizations and the descendants of former residents. Today, there's a public park and museum where Africville once stood to teach visitors about the history of the land and its community. If you've never heard of Africville, you're not alone. The tragic story of this small Black community in Nova Scotia is not as well known as it should be.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May 3rd. Good morning. I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa, it's 12 degrees, mostly cloudy skies. In Smiths Falls, it's 13. Here's what's making news this hour. A leaked draft opinion from the U.S. Supreme Court could completely transform women's reproductive rights. Politico released a draft opinion that suggested the court could be poised to overturn the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade case, which could lead to abortion bans in roughly half the states. President Joe Biden says the basic fairness and stability of their law demand the U.S. Supreme Court not overturn the case, and says he would work to legislate the right to abortion into federal law. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is set to meet with the Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell today at 3 p.m. to officially start the provincial election period. The campaign is expected to begin Wednesday for a June 2nd election. Polls at this point suggest the Progressive Conservatives are set up for re-election, with the third-place Liberals potentially overtaking the NDP to form the official opposition. The first step in the Ottawa Hospital securing $150 million for the city for the new Civic comes today. The Finance and Economic Development Committee will consider that piece of the $2.8 billion cost of that project. Staff have been working on how to grant the request with little to no financial burden on the property taxes paid by owners and renters. While the province does cover 90% of the cost of the hospital has to find ways to cover the rest. City News Time, 11:34. I'm Danielle Bain for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Dissolution of the legislature, 3 o'clock this afternoon. Writs drawn up, whatever they do with the writs, they're happening, the writs. And then the election is underway, June 2nd, Election Day in the province of Ontario. So let's take a look at this race as it stands right now, mere hours away from the official start of the campaign. Keto Maggie's here, CEO, Main Street Research. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Hey, it's great to hear from you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, for sure. It's gonna be an exciting month.
Yeah, you're doing some work for iPolitics. Tell us what you're doing for iPolitics.
Yeah, we're doing daily tracking of the provincial election. So we're going to have our Ontario election dashboard. It's been up for a while. We've been polling weekly in April. And then as of today, starting dailies, and we'll have the first daily numbers up Thursday morning, and then every morning after that, and right up until Election Day.
Okay. So tell us about the differences that a pollster like yourself can glean from, say, doing a survey every now and then to going then weekly and then going daily. What can you learn by being in the field, say, so much more often?
Well, I think, if your listeners, and you probably know this, in every election there tends to be polls that seem like what's called outliers.
Yeah.
What we know is on any given day, we can get widely different results from surveying. It's all random probability. We're talking to different people every single day. So these daily reports, the way we do it is each night we get about 450 samples for 3 days. We take the total and we report it. And then the next day, the 3-day-old part of the sample drops off and the newest one gets added. It tends to take some of those big swings out of the public opinion research. And so we get a smoother ride essentially, and try to avoid those outliers from just sort of taking a snapshot over 2 days once a week, where you can get these widely different results.
Yeah, I remember it wasn't your polling firm, but there was a firm that released one of those outlier polls in the dying days of the 2018 campaign. It was a poll that showed the NDP was in majority territory in Ontario, and
yeah, correct.
Liberals weren't happy about that. I know the Liberals weren't happy about that because I think it kind of disciplined the change vote, so yeah.
Yeah, and that can happen. In 2018, the polls showed wide divergence. There were some polls showing a substantial PC lead, other polls showing substantial NDP lead, and a bunch of them sort of in the middle, and it didn't really resolve. Usually by the end of an election, almost all the polls are showing very similar numbers, but it didn't entirely resolve itself in the last Ontario election. So, we're going to keep a close eye on it. We're going to be doing riding polls as well, just to take snapshots of certain, very close races, what we expect to be close races at least.
Yeah.
And that will inform sort of our final, forecast. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting election. I think the lines have been drawn. Doug Ford has sort of chosen cars and highways, and the Liberals have chosen
electric cars. Electric cars. Okay.
Yes, that's true. Right. Actually, electric cars too.
Yeah.
And clearly from the Buck a Ride announcement from the Liberals, they've chosen transit and people. So. Too early to say if that's going to be the deciding factor, but at least to me right now, it looks like that's the dividing line in this election.
Okay. So how's it looking for the incumbent right now, Premier Ford and his PC party?
Yeah, right now, and for the last 6 weeks, our polls have shown different degrees of majority territory for Ford and the PCs. It was as high as, I think, 99.2% chance of a majority with well over 70 seats. Our latest poll had it a little bit tighter with the Liberals up at 30 and the PCs at 37. And that still points to a majority, although a smaller one. But it's been really fluctuating. Every time a party makes an announcement about something that has pretty broad appeal, we see that change. And I'm not counting out the NDP yet. They do seem to be in third place, but their seat count efficiency is a little bit better at this level than. So they would still be sort of in that 20 plus seats range, with the Liberals pretty close as well in that 20. So hard to say right now exactly who would be official opposition. on election day, but there's still about 10 to 15 ridings that are too close to call, and those are the ones that we're going to be polling individual ridings on.
Okay. Give us a snapshot of the GTA picture. What's happening there in the burbs and in the city in Toronto?
Yeah, the 905 is, always where Ontario elections are won or lost. And if you based on our polls at least, it's going to be an overwhelming sweep by the PCs. We've had them as high as a 20-point lead across the 905 belt. Although that's, different parts of the 905 are very different. I think not going to see too many competitive races in Durham region. Ajax might be close out of all of those. In York region, of course, you have, Stephen Del Duca in his own riding. Vaughan Woodbridge, that one should be close. And a couple of others in the 905. Brampton will be mostly a PC NDP fight. And then in Mississauga, where Andrea Horwath was yesterday, that'll be mostly a PC Liberal fight. There should be some close races, I think. At least Mississauga Lakeshore will be a very close race. Brampton North and a couple of those will be very, very close races. But I at least right now, things can change. The PCs have a pretty commanding advantage going into this election in the 905.
Okay. What about Eastern Ontario? What's happening in our neck of the woods here?
Yeah, I think Ottawa, West Nepean, I think will be a Liberal pickup.
That's going to be interesting if that happens. That's never happened. If the Progressive Conservatives win the election, but lose Ottawa West Nepean, that's never happened before. That'll be it'll break its bellwether streak, So
yeah, there's been a number of those that have been broken over the last 8-10 years. There was the Sonia Lambton one in 2015, broke a 114-year streak of going with the government in 2015. Other elections, in Quebec and others that have broken those streaks more recently. That one will be close, but I will say right now, I think that one's a likely liberal pickup.
Gaining Liberal, okay.
The Glengarry Prescott Russell, although if you go to the dashboard, it says Liberal pickup. Remember that this is Amanda Simard, who ran as a PC, got elected, then crossed the floor. I think she will hold Glengarry Prescott Russell. Although the dashboard site says it's a Liberal
It's a pickup. Yeah.
And then, Ottawa Centre will also be competitive, although right now the model's showing that one lean NDP, but that will be one of the ones that we do riding polls on.
Yeah.
And then the rest, Vanier, Orleans, Ottawa South, safe Liberal seats. Can't imagine anything changing there.
Canada Carleton.
Yeah, that's all going to be
all blue.
PC blue. Yeah.
Okay. All right. These other parties in Ontario, the kind of breakaway PPC type parties, are they showing up on your radar at all as a pollster?
They were, about a month ago, we had them in kind of double digits. We've never measured specifically, like we don't prompt to say, New Blue Party or Ontario Party in our polls, but other was in that 10% range maybe a month ago. And then more recently, they're actually shrinking back closer to what we would expect, sort of a 5 to 7% of all the others combined. I think, those parties are difficult to measure. If you recall, in the federal election last year, the PPC, we had them in double digits. On election day, they came in at 4 or 5%. I think sometimes, people sort of do their own strategic voting. They think, okay, yes, I'm a, X party supporter, but in my riding, I know that that party or that candidate doesn't have a chance to win. And so I'm going to vote for my second choice. And in most cases, for those parties, the second choice is going to end up being PC. And so that's why I predict that the PCs will, probably overperform, and that those parties relative to polling will underperform because of that sort of natural strategic vote that takes place.
Okay. Well, look, I think it's one of the best interactive polling tools out there, this iPolitics one for Ontario. It's really well done. It's really well done. They did a great job on it.
It's the first site in Canada that sort of, we just launched the predictor where you can go and sort of select your own seats, similar to what, some U.S. sites do for presidential and midterm elections. So it's got all the bells and whistles, and, later today we're launching something new called Portal, which is going to be really fun and interesting as well.
Okay.
So have fun with it.
We will. Thank you, Keto. Bye-bye.
Right, thanks, Rob.
Yeah,
Take
bye.
care.
Keto Maggie from Main Street Research be polling throughout the election. Keep you up to date on all of that. The election, well, it really kind of starts today, doesn't it, with the writ? The dissolution of the legislature. And then what's the bus called? The Yes Express. Premier Ford's Yes Express, I guess, will hit the road tomorrow. We're already planning our broadcast for election night around here. So
special live coverage. Stay tuned. It's
going to be fun. June 2nd, Election Day in Ontario. Municipal Election Day is many months from now, but people could register yesterday as a candidate. We're going to talk about that coming up here on the Rob Snow Show. City News.
I'm Emily Bertrand, the owner of Royale Equestrian Center. This is Diamond. She's a 10-year-old thoroughbred. She used to be a racehorse and then made the transition to a riding horse. She loves jumping, and she's used for our more advanced students. So we started the farm 14 years ago with my mom and brother. My brother was actually driving by one day and saw the sign, and we applied. There were 60 applicants, and we got it. When we first started, there was not very much here, so our property's about 25 acres, and there was just this 100-year-old barn. And from there, we built onto it. We fixed up one stall at a time, one paddock at a time. We added one horse at a time, and slowly it built into what it is today. Every year, we're improving and trying to continue to build. And most recently, we added 2 shed-row barns this year. I love horses. I've been obsessed with horses since I was a little girl. The first time I got to ride, I was 4 years old, and I just loved it. My mom thought it was going to be a phase, and that phase never ended. I kept riding all through high school, and then eventually, started Royale Equestrian Center. It was my dream to always own a farm and to build a place that I could share my passion for horses with others and do the same thing for the kids that the horses did for me. So I absolutely love it. It's a dream come true. COVID hit, that was challenging. I was pretty stressed, especially the first few months, trying to figure out how are we going to navigate all of this. Our business is based on people coming in. We don't make much revenue if there's nobody coming in to ride. So that was really challenging. And then the other aspect of it was how are we going to care for all these horses if we're fully shut down and there's no income coming in. So we worked really hard. Some of our team were so kind to actually just come in and volunteer and help us out. And we made through it. We got through it. It's been hard and a lot of work, but it's also shown us how resilient we can be. So I'm happy with how we're coming out of COVID. Hopefully this is, we're nearing the end of all the shutdowns, but we've, survived it, and now we're starting to thrive again, which is great. So we have a great team. We have about 14 coaches, and then we have all our regular barn staff. We have our maintenance manager and crew, and if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to do this. It takes a huge amount of people, and then we also have a volunteer program. The volunteer program, it helps with us, especially with our beginner program, so they help with tacking up the horses and caring for the horses when we're really busy, and then they also get to gain some work experience. We take co-op students on. We're quite a busy and vibrant place, and it takes a lot of people to make it work, even through to behind the scenes from our accountants, my family, who are always stepping in to help out. It takes a small village.
Opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Walter Robinson is back with us on City News. Walter knows his way around Ottawa City Hall. He's been a chief of staff to a mayor here in the city. He's a former federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. He's a former political candidate. He's a former whole bunch of things. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
How are you?
I'm living the dream.
Good.
I'm a former homeowner. Jeez, we sold our house.
You sold your house, so congratulations. Congratulations. Now your problem will be having to find a new place to live that you can afford. So
we're working through that challenge.
That's good. That's good. I really liked your latest posting on the challenges ahead for the next council, and the candidates now are able to go out and raise money and spend money, and so the campaign begins. And in October, it's going to be a very different looking city council. New mayor and many new faces. Lots of wards will have new names. There's even going to be a brand new ward. And you suggest in this writing that it looked like public transit and light rail specifically was going to be the big issue, but now there's a whole bunch of other issues that the next council is going to have to deal with. Why don't we go through these? We have about 6 minutes here. Process. Start there, Walter. Process.
Well, you've had many on your show. You've covered this extensively. For the last decade, we've had what I would call cabinet-style government at City Hall. And it's worked for Jim Watson. He's run basically as he knew from his provincial days with, I don't want to call it an iron fist, but his agenda got through. And he worked the process, and his chief of staff and his councillor colleagues, to really make sure you had the omnibus budget motions, and you had what ended up being, after 3 terms of council, what was called the Watson Club. You were either in or you weren't. City Hall works best when, yes, a mayor needs to get his or her agenda through, but the mayor's office doesn't have all the answers, and there are people here who are elected from now 24 wards plus the mayor who may have good ideas and should bring good ideas, and City Hall should be a place where you have debate, you have vigorous debate, and then you decide, you make a decision, and you move forward as, if I can call it, a team. And I watch some of these things, especially post truckers protest. Some of the vitriol in that police board meeting and some of these council meetings, it was embarrassing for the people who sit around that table, and it was embarrassing for me as a taxpayer to say, we need that process to work better.
Well, I said, I'm glad they're not sitting in the same room.
It's Battle Royale. It's the WWE Monday Night Screaming episode.
My goodness, yeah. Probity.
Well, one definition of probity is complete and confirmed integrity, and rectitude, and synonyms are rectitude and trustworthiness. Have major city decisions met this test? And let's look at the last budget forecasting. We chatted about this before, and I think I called it a joke, and I stand by that word. For transit fare box revenue collections at 80% of pre-COVID levels. Yeah. And then we have the issues around $65 million in overrunning counting on the city portion of the new main library. Light rail, we'll come to that in a second, because that's a whole other issue unto itself. The taxpayer bleeding on the Lansdowne Park project, and now our friends at the Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group, good people, don't get me wrong, but now have a $330 million, quote-unquote, tax-neutral proposal they want City Council to decide on. A, for process improbity, that decision should be deferred to the next City Council. All right. And secondly, we need to really look at that hard.
Okay. Light rail, public transit.
Where do we start? Software glitches, door jams, overcrowded platforms, line welding breaks, dust buildups on cars. And this was kind of, I think, the first year. 26 or 27 now reportable incidents to the Transportation Safety Board. And what we really need to look at here in public transit, the next 4 weeks are really going to tell the tale. I think we have 2 or 2.5 weeks at the end of May, beginning of June, of the public inquiry, public delegations, putting city officials and people from the consortium on the so-called stand. I believe your show a month from now will tell a much different story, and a big bag of stinky stuff will be on full public display. Light rail will still be a major issue on the ballot for city councilors and those who aspire to be mayor.
Okay, let's wrap up with a few of your comments on policing. You know, we had the occupation, the Freedom Convoy, trust eroded, if not totally broken, between the police and members of the community, even the chief admitted, yeah, in advance of Rolling Thunder, this is a real opportunity for us to restore some faith that was lost in the Ottawa police. What else with the police, Walter?
Let me start first and foremost. I have great respect for the women and men of the Ottawa Police Service who leave their houses each day and may not come back. That's the job risk that they take. I think there's two big issues. One is systemic in the context of these issues around how the police service conducted itself and the decisions that were made by the leadership during the truckers' protest, the so-called Freedom Convoy. Then there are other things. The Ottawa Life magazine has done a great series over the last couple of years of over 70 officers who have been charged with various offenses, some people on administrative leave. And I think the other challenge that the police service has, and it's not unique to Ottawa, is what is progressive policing? What is policing in the 21st century? Lots of frontline officers will tell you, I'm not a mental health worker. I'm not a social crisis counselor. I'm not a drug interdiction officer. But we need to work and make sure we have the resources available for those other people who do that, but also have the police training and support that they can de-escalate and not put themselves at risk. And this is a culture of policing. This is a longer-term issue, which I think will help address some of the issues with racialized communities and the lack of trust. And when I grew up as a kid, that uniform was a sign of trust. For some communities, through a variety of issues, that uniform is a sign of fear. A police officer's uniform or a law enforcement or first responders' uniform, whether they're in uniform or not, they should be a sign of trust and hope when you are in need. That's what we need to strive for. And I think that'll be a debate. As much as policing is a separate issue, that will be a debate in big and small communities, the mayoral campaign and right down to ward campaigns.
Hey, great stuff. Really interesting insight this week, Walter. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep.
We'll keep watching.
Yep. Speak soon. That's Walter Robinson, former Chief of Staff to Mayor O'Brien. This has been The Rob Snow Show on City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Tune in weekdays starting at 9 on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com.